All right, welcome everybody to our show for Friday night. It is end of the week, so hope everybody's got good weekend plans. I think it's going to be a good one. It's going to be unseasonably warm in the northeastern United States, where I'm from, which means plenty of opportunities to get out, walk the doggo, do kinds of fun stuff like that. Maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to wheel the barbecue around and make some fun stuff, while the getting is good, as they say. So, lots happening in the news. The Iran problem continues to spiral out of control. The latest is about the shoot down of a passenger jet. Lots of accusations flying all over the place. The United States claiming the Iranians shot it down, killing a bunch of civilians. The Iranians claiming they did not shoot it down, and inviting Boeing in to inspect the wreckage. So, how do we sort this out? Honestly, I'm going full on conspiracy theory here. I think that what we're talking about here is probably either a mechanical failure in the aircraft, or if you want to go really off the reservation here and cross the line, go into the deep end, whatever your favorite euphemism is for exploring the really bizarre possibilities here, that maybe the United States shot it down in order to blame it on the Iranians. And at first blush, that sounds like something that could never possibly happen, but false flag operations have a long and glorious tradition of being used to start wars. It's how the Germans launched into World War II. They burned down their own parliament building called the Reichstag. The Reichstag fire was used as the justification for telling the German people, oh my god, Polish terrorists did it, we have to go invade Poland, and that's what got the public in Germany behind the Nazi war of aggression that started World War II. So that's just one recent example of it. The fact that the Gulf of Tonkin attack against the United States never happened is another. Things like that go back to the Roman Empire, which was famous for using attacks on its own populace as boogeymen, basically, to get the public behind the war efforts being waged by the Caesars. So, is it possible? Yes. Is there any concrete evidence suggesting it? No. But what you have to ask yourself in a public policy nightmare like this is, why would anybody shoot that thing down, right? The Iranians have a really good justification right now for being extremely angry at the United States. The U.S. used its drone strike powers to assassinate a major political and military leader from Iran at the Baghdad airport. So they are extremely angry at the United States. But shooting down a civilian airliner doesn't do anything to help them feel like they're balancing the scales. Their anger has nothing to do with that airliner or the people who were on it. It's not a military target. It's not an American target per se. It's not striking back against the great Satan, as their public seems to be demanding that they do. And if you're the Iranian leaders, you've got to know that shooting down a civilian unarmed jetliner from a country that isn't even in the wrong with you at the moment is just going to bring down the ire of the entire planet. So there's absolutely no motivation for the Iranians to attack that aircraft. Now, they did engage in a lot of missile attacks against American military bases recently, and the theory the United States is pushing at the moment is that one of the missiles fired against United States military targets somehow went off target and took out an airliner. I find that unlikely if they were using surface-to-surface missiles, because surface-to-surface missiles work by knowing where their point of origin is, knowing where their point of impact is supposed to be, and steering the aircraft to a specific GPS location. An aircraft does not have a fixed location while it's in flight. These missiles are not designed to be anti-aircraft weapons. The likelihood of being able to accidentally fire one and hit a civilian airliner as it travels through the sky is very, very small. So is it possible that some kind of missile misfire happened that hit the aircraft? Yes, but for a ground-to-ground missile to take out a flying aircraft, is one of those weird oddities, like you fire a missile at a building and a chicken flies through the flight path and hits it. Like, it's that order of magnitude of unlikely. So like the flying goose theory of how the airplane got hit seems like kind of a long shot. On the other hand, the United States missile strike against the Iranian leader and general Soleimani basically is an act of international assassination by one sovereign government against another. The United States had no legal authority to do that. We are not at war with Iran. We keep talking about these imminent attacks, but the exemption to the international law that prevents you from just outright attacking other countries would apply to whatever military force was actually about to hit an American interest. So let's say, for the sake of argument, and that there's no evidence this actually happened right now, but let's say Soleimani had ordered some kind of suicide squad, vest bomb attack against an American embassy or military base or something, a bar with American soldiers in it, whatever. The exemption would apply to attacking the suicide bombers, not attacking the person who ordered it. Because the person who ordered it, if the order is given, shooting them doesn't stop the attack. The exemption to these rules against just preemptively attacking other nations only applies to individuals and forces that are literally about to inflict harm upon you. So the United States could have been justified in, for example, shooting up a column of Iranian tanks that was about to fire on Americans on the border, or shooting down an Iranian bomber that was about to unload on an American military base, something like that. But there is no exemption for just assassinating national leadership that you just say had plans that they were developing for attacking the United States. Because every country in the world with a modern military is constantly making and updating plans for war with every other country in the world in the event that war breaks out. So, you can say, oh, Soleimani, what a jerk, he was planning attacks against the United States. But the United States is planning attacks on everybody. We have giant, files and files of war plans for how to attack other nations, and we keep developing them and updating them, and it doesn't mean we're about to implement them. So the fact that a country is developing plans that could be put into use against another country is not the same thing as actually having an imminent attack underway. And that means that the United States is in the wrong about the drone strike. They literally just assassinated another world leader for the hell of it, right? So, what do you do if you're Donald Trump? You're about to go into court in front of the Senate for being impeached. You're in legal trouble. Your political, public image is in the toilet amongst everybody but your diehard supporters. What do? You need a distraction. So you create a, rapidly escalating conflict with Iran. And when you assassinate their leader and that fails to get the Iranians to declare war against the United States, because, let's be honest, they're not morons. They know that going to war directly with the nuclear-armed United States that has the single largest military budget in the world by, orders of magnitude over even the second-place person is foolish and suicidal. So the Iranians don't immediately launch a war. But, you're Trump and you're trying to get them to do something that would make you a wartime president, because it's almost impossible to unseat a wartime president. So what do? You fake some horrific crime that the Iranians have done in order to make the rest of the world hate them, so that you can justify a war with them even if the Iranians did not attack you first. So is that a possibility? Absolutely. Do we know for sure that's what happened? No, of course not. Any government that would undertake such an operation would go to great pains to keep it secret, and there's no way for us to know what actually happened there. But the fact that the Iranians are saying, Boeing, you made this aircraft, we're inviting you to inspect the wreckage, is something they probably would not do if the wreckage would show a giant missile hole in it. That would demonstrate that they had in fact shot down this airplane. So I find it very unlikely that the Iranians actually initiated attack against that aircraft. And if it, in fact they did, the weapons used are simply not appropriate for that. It doesn't make any sense to think the Iranians would intentionally attack that airplane, or that the missiles being used for it were even suitable weapons for shooting down an aircraft in flight. So what does that leave us with? I don't know. Possibilities and rumors and conspiracies, none of which are good. But we'll have to wait and see where the actual evidence takes us before we can come to any conclusions. I'm just saying, when people come out and say, hey, is it possible the United States did this? You got to remember that people didn't believe the United States would fake the Gulf of Tonkin attack that led us into the Vietnam War, and we did. People didn't think the Germans would have burned down their own parliament building, but they did. So, this is a tactic governments have been using for literally thousands of years. You can get examples at least back to the Roman Empire, and who knows how much further back than that. So don't discount it just because the idea of it is horrific or sounds implausible, because that is how you conceal things like this, is by making it sound so unlikely that it would happen that people are reluctant to believe it. So wait until facts come out. Keep in mind what is or is not likely to be true. Ask yourself why Iran would piss off the entire planet when they're already on precarious diplomatic footing because of conflict with the United States, and then figure out, do you really believe they would intentionally bring down the wrath of the whole planet on themselves by doing that? So let's take a look at the news from the Associated Press. And by the way, the word atheism is up there for two reasons today. One of which is I am in fact an atheist, and anybody who wants to try to ask me questions about it or wants to understand it better is welcome to do so. I have an open invitation to anybody who thinks they can convince me that there is in fact anything supernatural to give their best case, and we can examine it. But also, it's a big word on the screen because that affects the thumbnail that appears on Twitch when you're looking at the different channels in the politics section. And sometimes people will show up just because they see a big word that catches their attention. So it's also kind of a marketing thing, and we'll see if it works as the rest of the evening goes on. Let's delve right into the Associated Press article on Iran. Trump ups Iran accusations, says 4 U.S. embassies have been targeted. Okay. Confronted by persistent questions about his military action in the Middle East, Trump and his top officials offered a string of fresh explanations Friday, with Trump contending Iranian militants had planned major attacks on 4 U.S. embassies. Again, had plans for is not the same thing as implementing those plans, so keep it in mind. That's an important distinction. Pompeo said the U.S. didn't know when or where attacks might occur, which immediately means the United States has just admitted that they have no evidence that an attack is imminent, because in order for you to call an attack imminent, you have to know that an attack is about to happen. You have to know where it's about to happen. You have to know when it's about to happen. Otherwise, you don't get to call it imminent. So they are admitting right here that there is no exemption that they can use to justify attacks against Iranian interests, because there are no plans currently underway to hurt American interests. If there were, they would already be talking about them, and attacks would already be happening against those forces. Trump, meanwhile, announced additional sanctions against Iran, which he had promised after a barrage of missiles fired by Islamic State against American bases in Iraq earlier this week. We've talked about that in previous shows, but something you have to keep in mind is that the economic sanctions the United States has imposed upon Iran are ruinous to that nation's economy, and mostly affect their poorest civilians, not the military, not the leadership. But these are also the same types of sanctions that the United States had imposed upon Japan in the 1930s. And if you really delve into the history of World War II, what you find out is the attack on Pearl Harbor was not some completely unexpected thing that came out of the blue and nobody had any idea the Japanese were pissed off at us. The United States had been engaged in a trade war with the Japanese and had used its economic might and influence around the world to impose just the kinds of sanctions on Japan that it is now imposing on Iran. And the Japanese economy was on the verge of collapse. Its public was losing food. They were unable to get medicines. Their economy was shutting down. Remember, it's an island nation. Without having the resources on the home islands, they have to import everything. So, having these sanctions in place and preventing their imports and exports from occurring was devastating to the Japanese. And that is what pushed them to sign on with the Germans and get involved in World War II. And in order to do that, they needed to try to forestall any American response, since they already knew the economics were against them. The United States was already attacking them economically. They had no reason to think the United States would not launch into war against them militarily as well. So they struck out at the 7th Fleet at Pearl Harbor in order to try to delay any American intervention in the Pacific, allowing them to focus on gaining a foothold on the mainland where they could get the resources the United States had been denying them. This is not usually part of the high school history class you get on World War II, but you can look it up yourself. You will find tons and tons of information on it. So by putting the squeeze on Iran in the same way that the United States did against Japan in the 1930s, we are not only hurting just the general public there, because we're not really hurting their leaders, but we're also providing them the same impetus that we gave to Japan before World War II to side with enemies of the United States who will gladly, help them, be willing to sell them goods and, trade with them. And you can see that China and Russia are already starting to talk about how they're coming to the aid of the poor, beleaguered Iranians. So the United States is basically pushing Iran into joining enemies of America. That's not a good thing to do, especially since Iran is one of the biggest oil, supply nations on the planet. Iced tea is delicious, by the way. Completely unrelated to news, politics, or anything else. Those Iranian missiles, which caused no casualties, were prompted by the U.S. drone strike that killed General Qasem Soleimani last week in Baghdad. This set off a chain of events that may have included the downing of a Ukrainian jetliner. Again, why would the Iranians want to attack something that's not an American interest? Possibly by Iranian missile, and calls by the Iraqi government to expel U.S. troops from their country. Again, the call to expel Iraq troops from the country is a result of Soleimani's killing. Attacking that jet would have no bearing on that whatsoever. At the White House, Trump issued an executive order adding additional U.S. sanctions to the already long list his administration had imposed in an effort to force Iran to accept a new agreement that would curb its nuclear program and halt support for militant groups throughout the Middle East. So, in other words, the United States is using its political and economic power to try to dominate the actions of another sovereign nation. Trump declared the U.S. was holding Iran responsible for attacks against the United States, as well as a threat to U.S. service members, diplomats, and civilians, an apparent reference to the justification for killing Soleimani, which, again, there has been no attack. There was no imminent attack underway. No harm landed on American troops. The only harm that came to U.S. interests at all happened after the United States attacked them first. The United States will continue to counter the Iranian regime's destructive and destabilizing behavior, he said, which is ironic since, there's very little in the Middle East as destabilizing as American activities in it. Trump and the others faced continuing questions over claims of an imminent threat. Here we go. Members of Congress said Pompeo and other officials did not provide sufficient detail or justification in briefings this week. Pompeo was asked to define imminent. I don't know exactly which minute Pompeo says, which is another way of saying he doesn't know when, so there's no imminent attack. We don't know exactly which day, so not only do they not know what time, they don't even know a date. When it would have been executed, but it was very clear Soleimani was plotting a broad, large-scale attack against American interests, and those attacks were imminent, which again is him saying, we have no idea when these things were going to happen, or even if they were going to happen, but we're going to call it imminent anyway. So that's just him talking out both sides of his face. Both Pompeo and Trump had said U.S. embassies were threatened. Again, they have produced zero evidence of that whatsoever. The Secretary of State broadened it to include American facilities, which is just a way of shaking the boogeyman stick and making everybody, who's an American have to worry, because American facility could mean anything. including military bases throughout the region. This was going to happen, and American lives were at risk, he said, without having any information about when or how or why or anything. Trump gave a more worrisome number, but no specifics until or in a later comment. I can reveal that I believe it probably would have been 4 embassies. So he believes, not knows, that it might have been, it probably would have been 4 embassies. So again, he has no specifics, no concrete evidence at all. He spoke amid revelations by U.S. officials that the American military had tried but failed to kill another senior Iranian commander on the same day that Soleimani was killed. Apparently, Abdul Reza Shalai was apparently part of an effort to cripple the leadership of Iran's Quds Force, which the U.S. has designated a terror organization along with the larger Islamic Revolutionary Guard force. So not only did the United States assassinate Soleimani, they planned to assassinate 2 Iranian leaders on the same day and just botched the second one. So fantastic. Pelosi called the killing of Soleimani provocative and disproportionate, and other members said they were unconvinced after a closed-door briefing on the intelligence. If the government couldn't even produce information for use in a secret meeting that would make it clear that this was justifiable, they should never have fired those missiles. Period. End of story. The new sanctions were an immediate response to Iran firing a barrage of missiles at American bases. After the killing of Soleimani, no one was injured. The larger U.S. goal is to force Iran to negotiate a new agreement on limiting its nuclear program, because apparently the one that we already had in place that prevented them from having nuclear weapons is not good enough for Trump. I don't know, maybe because it doesn't have his name on it or something. But, I mean, come on. They already were in agreement not to have nuclear weapons, so what more do you friggin' want? 2018, Trump withdrew from the nuclear agreement signed under Obama that traded curbs on the program for easing of sanctions. Since then, the administration has added additional measures that have created hardship in Iran and brought its oil revenue to historic lows, but have failed to bring the Iranian government to the negotiating table. That could be because the Iranians are, not willing to say, we're the United States' bitch, and they don't want to just roll over and get beaten down by American politicians. Okay, the sanctions added Friday include measures aimed at 8 senior Iranian officials involved in what Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin called destabilizing activities throughout the Middle East, as well as Tuesday's missile barrage. Those measures, which would freeze any assets the officials have in the U.S. jurisdiction and prohibit financial transactions with them, are largely symbolic, since such senior figures are unlikely to have assets under American control after decades of hostility between the two nations. So in addition to the sanctions that are wrecking the economy and hurting the little guys, they made a token gesture to try to stick it to some of the Iranian leadership using a method that would do absolutely nothing just so the United States could say it was doing something. Great. Let's see. Other measures could have a significant effect on strategically important sectors of the Iranian economy. The executive order grants the administration power to place anyone involved, even indirectly, in the construction, manufacturing, textile, or mining sector on a global financial blacklist. So basically, they are shutting down the Iranians' ability to engage in international trade in any of the industries they're talking about: construction, manufacturing, clothing, mining. It also targets 17 of the largest steel and iron manufacturers, along with 3 foreign companies, including 2 based in China. So it's basically a move designed to further cripple the Iranian economy and beat them to a pulp so that we can force them to come to the negotiating table, which is basically, that's tyranny on the part of the United States. That's not negotiating in good faith. That's, we'll destroy your civilians if you don't do what we say. It sent a signal to other foreign firms that continue to do business with Iranian steel producers that this is off limits. Because, of course, for some reason, the United States thinks it has the right to tell countries who they can or cannot do business with, because America, F yeah. Adnan Mazarai, a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, said the sanctions will hurt an Iranian economy that was forced to cut fuel subsidies earlier this year, triggering nationwide protests, but will also make it harder for the government to negotiate with the U.S. This will be seen as another sign the U.S. government cannot be taken at its word when it says it wants to negotiate. Again, good point, because this proves the United States is just a thug. It is not there to negotiate in good faith with anybody. Mnuchin insisted the sanctions are working and deprived Iran of tens of billions of dollars. They would be using that for terrorist activities because, of course, he's going to say that. Maybe, I don't know, just maybe they might use it for other stuff, that governments do. But no, according to Mnuchin, that would only go toward financing terrorism because reasons. And there's no question by cutting off the economics to the region, you're having an impact. Yeah, you're starving people out. So, yeah. So, more shit from, the current American administration. Oh, God. And there's another article about how they tried to kill a second guy but blew it. U.S. dismisses Iraq request to work on a troop withdrawal plan. Iraq's caretaker prime minister asked Washington to work out a roadmap for an American troop withdrawal, but the U.S. State Department on Friday bluntly rejected the request, saying the two sides should instead talk about how to recommit to their partnership. As soon as a sovereign nation says, we want your troops to leave, and you refuse, you are no longer an ally, you are an occupying force. Okay? The fact that the United States has the balls to say something like that is just staggeringly bad. Thousands of anti-government protesters turned out in the capital in southern Iraq, many calling on both Iran and America to leave Iraq, reflecting their anger and frustration over the two rivals trading blows on Iraqi soil. I can't blame them. That would be like the United States asking North and South Korea to pull troops out of here if they had any stationed, if those two forces started bombing each other or taking out American infrastructure as they did it. And if they refused to do it, that would not be a sign that they were our friends. It would be a sign that they were our enemies. The request came from the Prime Minister, pointed to his determination to push ahead with demands for U.S. troops to leave Iraq, stoked by the drone strike. In a phone call Thursday, he told the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that U.S. actions were unacceptable breaches of Iraqi sovereignty and a violation of their security agreements, which is completely accurate. He asked Pompeo to send delegates to prepare a mechanism to carry out the Iraqi parliament's resolution on withdrawing foreign troops. Let's see. The United States is entering Iraq and flying drones without permission of Iraq, which is true. He was standing by the push for U.S. forces to leave. Iraqis feel furious and helpless at being caught in the middle of the fighting. I don't blame them at all. I do not blame them at all. I wouldn't want, bombs and drone strikes and stuff going off in my neighborhood. How about you guys? Anybody who is here in the chat who would really gladly have bombs and, missiles and such blowing their neighborhood to shit, raise your hand. Otherwise, you can just quietly sit there and realize that would be really bad for you. Pompeo the State Department flatly dismissed their request, saying U.S. troops are crucial for the fight against Islamic State, which in no way is justification for a sovereign nation saying get your troops out of here and the U.S. saying no. Pompeo says they'll stay there and the U.S. will continue its mission. We're happy to continue the conversation with the Iraqis about what the right structure is, which is his way of saying we're going to do what we want and fuck the Iraqis. Yeah. Our mission set there is very clear. We've been there to perform a training mission to help the Iraqi security forces be successful and continue the campaign against ISIS, to continue the counter-Daesh campaign, he said, using alternate acronyms for the militant group. And again, none of that matters if the Iraqis are saying get your troops out of here. The only legal action you can take is to get your troops out of there. Anything else constitutes invasion and occupation. We're going to continue that mission, but as times change and we get to a place where we can deliver upon what I believe, what the president believes is our right structure, with fewer resources dedicated to that mission will do so. In other words, the troops are staying there until the president says move them, and they don't care what the Iraqis say. I mean, it's just bonkers. The United States is literally an invading force there if their government doesn't want them there anymore. And there is no legal justification for leaving the troops there when the home government of that sovereign nation says get out. And the guy's not even saying leave now. He just wants to draw up a strategy and timeline. And Pompeo and the president are saying no, which is, again, them saying they don't care that Iraq is a sovereign nation of its own. Ugh. Man, I hate this administration's activities. Alright, what else we got? The drummer for Rush died. I'm not sure that's massively world-shaking, but it's true, so we got that. They're going to probe about the drone strike. Again, not a huge shock. Let's see. A look at what didn't happen this week. That promises to be an interesting article. A roundup of some of the most popular but completely untrue stories and visuals of the week. Okay. Claim photo shows Obama shaking hands with Iranian president. The image was manipulated to replace the former Prime Minister of India with the Iranian. The original photo was taken in 2011. So there you go, Photoshop being used by obviously American right-wing assholes to try to make Obama look bad, because that's what right-wing assholes like to do. Claim video shows U.S. shooting down missiles launched by Iran. False, the footage is computer-generated. A number of Twitter users falsely shared computer-generated imagery claiming it showed the U.S. takedown of Iranian missiles. All missiles launched by Iran were shot down. The artillery system with electronic vision fires 50 shots per second. The U.S. has the most powerful army in the world and the best president in the world, at Real Donald Trump, a Twitter user stated with the video shared on January 9. Again, Trump fans lying through their teeth on the internet. Hello, Russ. Things are going okay tonight. We've been talking about the Iran situation. The United States is digging itself a giant diplomatic hole from which it may never be able to dig its way out. The fact that it has left its troops in Iraq, despite the fact that their parliament is asking them to, plan to leave, and saying they will not leave, until they feel like it. The fact is that makes the United States an invading and occupying force there, not an ally. But, nobody's willing to come out and say that because it makes the United States look bad. But, if a foreign nation ignores your sovereignty, moves in troops, and won't take them out when you ask, they're not your friends. So now we're looking at a list of fake news stories that have come around this week. Claim photo shows the film star Jan Seberg wearing shorts and riding a bike on a busy street in Iran in 1970. It appears to be fake. Seberg was manipulated to make it appear like she was on a street in Tehran. The original photo of her was taken more than a decade before in the United States. Following the killing of Iran's top general, a flurry of social media posts began circulating to suggest the country was better before the 1979 revolution that led to the resignation of U.S.-backed Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and the birth of the Islamic Republic. There have been a lot of fake pictures being sent around, portraying Iranian women dressed much more casually, that kind of thing. The photo they're talking about being from 1979 was actually taken in 1959 by an Italian photographer in the driveway of a house in Hollywood. Oh, that's funny. Claim, golden retriever saved a baby koala from a wildfire in Australia. The facts, photos circulating on social media of a koala snuggled on the back of a golden retriever were not taken after the dog rescued the marsupial from the unprecedented wildfires. Kerry McKinnon, the dog's owner, told the Associated Press the photos were taken in September of 2018 when a baby koala wanting to escape cold temperatures climbed onto the dog, Asha, for warmth. Which, I gotta be honest with you, is really adorable to think about a koala riding a dog to stay warm. Isn't that just the cutest thing you can imagine? Mahana, I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for saying you really enjoy it. I try to work with this. I've got years of experience in political analysis and understanding op-ed and things like that. I worked for Yahoo News doing op-ed writing from like 2011 to 2013. I submitted straight reporting to them, op-ed work, analysis, all kinds of stuff. And it's been fascinating since I was involved in that professionally to track politics and try to help people understand what the realities of this stuff are compared to what the shined and polished imagery that you see shown on television news and such and on your social media outlets. So yeah, Russ, no war with Iran. I am totally on board with you on that one. I'm still kind of squeeing over the idea of a baby koala riding the dog to stay warm. How cute is that? In the photos, the baby koala can be seen perched on Asha's back as it looks directly at the camera, with the golden retriever lying down and looking unbothered. The photos were widely shared at the time. Oh, that's adorable. All right. Claim NASA satellite photo shows the current wildfires raging in Australia. The facts, an image circulating on social media that shows much of Australia aglow from the ongoing wildfires was enhanced, and is not a NASA photo. It's a 3D visualization made by an artist to capture and highlight the wildfires over a month. So it's a visual representation created to try to explain what's happening over a month-long period of time. Interesting. Too bad that people are deciding to use it for propaganda purposes, Scale is a little exaggerated due to the render's glow, but generally true to the info from the NASA website, which basically means he intentionally made it glow brighter for visual purposes. That's funny. Claim, Finland planning launch of a 4-day work week. The facts the Finnish government said on Tuesday squelched a story spreading in international media about the Nordic nation's plans to reduce the average working time for full-time employees to 24 hours a week, or 4 6-hour days. Oh, God. And here's something interesting, by the way. This one paragraph tells you everything you ought to know. Newspapers and news sites in Britain, the United States, India, Pakistan, Russia, and Australia were among the outlets that on Monday credited Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin as the person responsible for the shorter week plan. Which just goes to show you that even major media sources often completely fail to fact check at all. At all. So just because something shows up on your favorite media outlet, it doesn't mean you should just not think of things through for yourself. Use your brains, people. Use them. Major media outlets are generally pretty good at doing their fact checking, but as you can see from this one, failures happen. Failures do happen. Oh, that's funny. So, yep, those are some of the big, completely untrue news items circulating around on social media for the week. Amusing as heck, I gotta admit. All right, let's see. Texas governor to reject new refugees, first under Trump. Not surprising that the first to do this is a Texan. For those who are not internationally traveled and such, over the past few years, it's become kind of slang in a lot of European nations to call stupid things, "That's so Texas," because the state of Texas has literally a global reputation for doing stupid, messed up shit. Okay? So when Texas does something, odds are it's going to be a bonehead move. Texas will no longer accept the resettlement of new refugees, becoming the first state known to do so under a recent Trump administration order, Governor Greg Abbott said Friday. Abbott wrote that Texas has been left by Congress to deal with disproportionate migration issues resulting from a broken federal immigration system. He added that Texas has done more than its share. You know what? If you actually give a shit about those migrants and want to see the system reformed, stop being Republicans, assholes. because they're the ones who keep on botching the system and refusing to do anything to fix it, just instead deciding to ban people and ban people and ban people and separate families at the border and throw children in cages and, let them go without food, water, basic sanitation, blankets, So if you care, stop voting red. Welcome back, Russ. Oh, God. So, yep. Republicans in Texas proving once again that they can be a bunch of cruel, heartless idiots. All right. Let's see. What else is happening according to the Associated Press? Can cash buy the Democratic nomination? 2 billionaires are trying. Man, I hope the answer to that is no, because we have enough money polluting American politics as it is on the political right. The last thing I think we need is more billionaires on the left. Billionaires Michael Bloomberg and Tom Steyer are testing an unproven theory in the contest for the Democratic presidential nomination that their vast personal wealth can buy the trophy. I know, right? It's like capitalism gives you a fucking brain tumor. Capitalism is awful. It is absolutely awful. I just did a show on how bad capitalism is. I will be doing more shows on how bad capitalism is because of how harmful it is to everybody in this country and around the world. But yes, that is a very on-point observation. Not since Perot spent $63.5 million in '92. More than $100 million in today's dollars on his run for president as an independent have candidates for the White House banked so much on their massive fortunes alone delivering results. Bloomberg founded a financial data and media company, was the mayor of New York, and Steyer is a California businessman. They've saturated key primary states with hundreds of millions in TV and social media advertising, proving once again that if you're rich enough, you can get your name out there. It doesn't make you a good candidate, though. To the dismay of many in the party, it might work. People underestimate the billionaires at their own peril, said Rebecca Katz, a progressive Democratic strategist in New York. Just because you have all the money in the world doesn't mean you'll win the nomination to become president, but it's a hell of a head start. Hey, Democratic National Committee, you want to put a stop to these billionaires taking over your organization? Back Bernie! Stop torpedoing him, you stupid assholes! If you want to see what grassroots can do, back the grassroots guy instead of trying to torpedo him every chance you get. Holy shit. Give the guy a fair shake. The voters will tell you what they want if you just give them a chance. But when you guys try to artificially manipulate stuff like you did in 2016, you botch it and we end up with more Trump. All right. The party's progressive wing sought to make the 2020 contest a referendum on the taint of big money. They championed small online donations from grassroots. Bloomberg and Steyer have turned that argument inside out by eliminating the need for donors altogether, although unlike Bloomberg, Steyer does accept campaign contributions, because of course he does. There's no question the system is set up to benefit the people who can self-fund, which is another reason to reform the whole goddamn election system in this country and do what a lot of other countries do. Have the entire election season be 30 days before the election, have the elections be on a weekend to allow more people to get there, make everybody pull their money from a public pool where every candidate gets exactly the same amount of money for campaigning, or better yet, just make it so that every media outlet in the country has to give exactly the same treatment and airtime to every candidate, so that there's no favoritism, there's no money involved in it, you don't even have to have fucking donors anymore. You can get rid of the whole lobbyists buying politicians thing. None of it would hurt the American people at all, and it would benefit the American public enormously. And put an end to the whole, calling you on the fucking phone in the middle of dinner and being like, "Hi, I'm from this candidate's campaign. Would you like to go door to door with a friggin' clipboard and beg people for their vote?" Yeah, Russ, the reason, just so you know, historically, the reason that the elections in the United States are on Tuesdays instead of on a weekend was expressly to benefit the rich, because rich landowners would go to church on Sunday and then they would have to, get the horse and carriage put together and have their driver drag their ass to a polling place, 2 days ride away. So they would vote on Tuesday and then come back, for like spend the night there on Tuesday, leave on Wednesday, be back on Friday, and be able to be back for the weekend again, while their slave wage, or literal slave employees, depending on where they were in the country, would toil away for the week. And the rich would just make a week-long vacation out of it. But the time where that's appropriate is long past. Like, really long past. We need to make voting something where every single citizen of this country who is between the ages of 18 and dead is automatically registered to vote. Period. End of story. And make polling places available all over the place. Get rid of those easily hacked electronic voting machines. Go back to just paper ballots counted by actual people. Put some actual security measures in place like they have in other countries. Make sure there's an audit trail that lets you track, where the votes are, whether the ballots have been counted or not. It's just not that friggin' hard to fix, but the system in place is so beneficial to the establishment that they don't want to change it. Okay? Yeah, most people don't know this stuff, Russ, and again, that's part of the problem. You say, thanks, public education. Even most private schools don't teach this stuff. It doesn't even occur to most people that it's important for folks to know this. Like, most people just don't even think about teaching each other this stuff. Where else are we here? Yeah, so these guys are worth billions, one of them over 50 billion, and are just trying to buy their way to the front of the pack. That's just fucking bonkers. But you know what's interesting? What these guys can't buy with all their money? They can't pack a stadium like Bernie Sanders can. Sanders shows up to, buy a sandwich, and a whole town's worth of people shows up at the restaurant. It's unreal, the level of popularity this man has. And you know what the thing is that's mind-boggling? It's not that he's doing anything so revolutionary. It's that he's just not being an asshole. That's his whole claim to fame is, hey, look, I'm not a dick. And, people are flocking to him. And he's got 50 years of evidence proving that he's just a basically decent guy who's looking out for the average citizen. It's not rocket science. If any of the other candidates had his record and his ideas and, were just willing to take the same stance that he did, they'd be equally popular. But everybody is hedging and, trying to garner favor with this group or that group. And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to beat Trump by trying to convert Republicans. They don't want to be converted. They want to strengthen Trump's stranglehold on the country so that he can be even worse. It's just bonkers. Yeah. Okay, TMI there, Russ, but okay. Yeah, so it's crazy. You're not going to convince Trump voters to switch. We showed a video not too long ago that we did an analysis of. You see, dirt poor Trump voters in the worst parts of this country that are most economically devastated, and they're all on food stamps, and Trump cuts their food stamps, and they're like, isn't it beautiful that so many groups spring up to help us make up the shortfall, because Trump fucked us, but we love Trump so much. It's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Their reasons for voting Trump have nothing to do with self-interest. They have nothing to do with common sense. They have nothing to do with rationality. It's just that Trump hates the same people they do, and they're on board with that. Yang is not going to switch Trump voters because he's not hateful enough, and he's not a good Democratic candidate. His economic plan blows goats. And Tulsi Gabbard is a fucking traitor to the left. Not being willing to support the impeachment process against Trump, screw her. Get her out of that lineup. She should not even be campaigning anymore. her whole family is diehard Republicans. The only reason Gabbard ran as a Democrat is because she was running in Hawaii, which is a major Democrat state, and she wanted to win. You know, she's not a real Democrat. She's not actually left leaning in the least. Yeah, I mean, other candidates are saying you need to address this. And he's right. I mean, a lot of the candidates that are falling away not because they were necessarily bad people, but because they just don't have the war chest to compete against the vast fortunes of these rich guys. Let's see. Yeah, so he spends money on commercials, billboards, electronic advertisements of every kind. Steyer has spent over $10 million just in South Carolina. He's targeted minority-owned media in particular. Communicating in a vacuum can move numbers. That's true. But the question is, when people start tuning into other names and seeing other people on their TV set, do they stick with Steyer, or is that just a sugar high? I'm going to say sugar high. Yeah, so it's bad for the country when billionaires just want to buy their way into being the candidate for the Democrats. Oh, God. Where are we looking at here? Oh, God. Stomach illness outbreak at Yosemite prompts major cleanup. Blech! I guess what they're saying is a lot of people have been vomiting and crapping themselves around Yosemite National Park. Barf-ola. Barf-ola. Nice. Way to go, Russ. Oh, God. More Epstein stuff. Okay, have we all had about enough of, like, pedophiles? Are we all friggin' done with them? Can we just throw them all in friggin' jail and be done with that? I am so tired of rich pedos getting, white glove treatment because they're rich. Ugh. So tired of it. Oh, great. Judge orders homeless women to leave house. Great. Oh, good. Famous car from a movie sells for almost $4 million because that's what you really need is a $4 million Mustang. Oh, boy. Speaking of planes crashing, Boeing's 737 problem makes me not want to fly anywhere ever again. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not too hot on getting in an airplane after all these Boeing crashes. That's some scary stuff. Yeah, chat logs and emails show cavalier attitude by Boeing employees. Yeah, man, it might be a problem, but, that's okay, man. Can you even imagine that kind of thing? Ugh. Good God. We now have 100 miles of border wall. That's another subject I'm tired of. Okay, if there are any right-wingers watching right now, I just need to remind you, the wall is a stupid idea. It is not going to stop immigration. All you need to defeat a 30-foot wall is 31 feet of rope. It's just not an effective thing. There's a reason we don't build castles anymore. It's because giant walls are not a useful defense against much of anything. Ugh. Just makes me want to head desk so hard whenever I hear somebody talking about how much they want the wall. The wall. Build the wall. Shut up. You don't know what you're freaking talking about. I used to joke that if Trump builds a 30-foot high wall all along the southern border, I'm going to open a 31-foot ladder company in Mexico. Make my millions that way. And it's come on. It's just not rocket science. You're not going to stop people by, there's like friggin' documentaries on Netflix now about free solo climbers, like dudes who will barehand climb up the face of a mountain with no goddamn rope. You think you're going to stop people from getting into America with a wall 30 feet high? Come on. Give me a break. Unreal. Yeah, that's what they call you, a libtard. Because they're just a bunch of jerks. Oh, man. Vegas, here we go. Vegas Black Widow murderer free after 20 years. One of Nevada's most notorious convicted murderers, dubbed a Black Widow killer, said after being released from prison Friday that she did not kill her millionaire husband 25 years ago in Las Vegas and plans to use the proceeds from her story to offer money for tips about who did kill the guy. Oh, God. No, I think conservatives are basically conservatives, you know? Margaret Rudin, 76, a socialite antique shop owner who vanished before she was indicted and spent 2 years as a fugitive ahead of her trial, left a women's prison after winning parole from her 20 years to life sentence for the killing of real estate mogul Ron Rudin. Yeah, I'm sure she wants to be exonerated, but I mean, at this point, does it really matter? You're 76. You know, you're never going to get those years back. It's if you are not guilty, it sucks. But you're not getting that time back. You can't wind the clock back. You know, you may as well just move on with your life. You've got money, you've got funds, do something with your time. Don't waste the rest of your life trying to get exonerated because, number one, if you didn't do it, you already know you didn't do it. And number two, whether you did it or not, the world around you is convinced that you did, and they're not going to care. Even if you find some evidence that you didn't do it, people will hear about it and forget it the next day. You know, they got their own lives to deal with. They're not going to spend the rest of their lives apologizing to you for having thought you were guilty if you're not. You know? All right, so off to CNN we go. Let's see what's going on CNN. We'll take a quick look at that. Oh, God. Trump claims he's the most transparent president in American history, but these are the secrets his administration doesn't share. Wow. Just when you think there's no lie Trump can't tell, you know, he says he's the most transparent president in history. Ugh. Oh, God. I'm thinking I'm going to throw up in my mouth a little if he keeps talking. Cuomo says Trump lies more often than he golfs. Oh, God. Rapper dies at age 42. Heartburn medications were called. Harry Haynes dead at 27. What the... The world is just so goddamn weird now. The headlines you see, the news that's happening, like, how did the world get this way? How did the world get this way? All right. Oh, I guess school shootings are starting to happen in Mexico now. An 11-year-old in Mexico told some of his classmates today is the day, then opened fire. Teacher was killed and 6 other people injured when an 11-year-old started shooting up a private school. The shooter, a 6th grader with 2 guns, also died. Unbelievable. He asked to use the restroom. 15 minutes later, the teacher went to look for him and found him leaving the restroom with weapons in hand. Said authorities believe the boy was influenced by the video game Natural Selection. Oh my God, blaming video games. Blaming video games for this. Why? Why? Holy shit. When I was a kid, we played, guns with our fingers and ran around actually pretending to shoot each other, and we didn't shoot kids up. You know, like seeing it on a video screen does not make you a murderer any more than watching a legal drama makes you a frickin' lawyer. Holy shit, okay. Oh, yes. Natural Selection 2 says it's an immersive multiplayer shooter that pits aliens against humans. Because that's what the 11-year-old was doing. He was attacking aliens from another world. Because he was totally thinking he was attacking aliens, right? No. Ugh. God. By the way, I've actually played that game, Natural Selection, and the sequel, Natural Selection 2. It's garbage. It wouldn't convince anybody to do anything. It's like playing on an Atari 2600 by today's standards. Pfft. Crazy talk, people. Alright. What else? What else is going on? When you see my avatar looking over here, I'm actually looking at the second monitor to see what the headlines say. Trump is furious over vote. What isn't Trump furious about? I mean, come on. Airline introduces seat map to avoid babies. Of all, and you know what? Some airline executive probably put together $1 million fact-finding team to decide that what they really need to do is map out the passengers so you can avoid infants. Russ says, great, now when I point out to conservatives that the U.S. has a disproportionate gun violence problem, they're going to be like, well, there was a shooting in Mexico. Yeah, I know. You know what you tell them back? You just tell them, that's America exporting its culture again. You know. There we go. Here we go. So, the Brazilians are pissed because there's a Netflix special that portrays Jesus as gay, and they lost their shit over it and wanted it banned from being displayed in their country. The president of Brazil's Supreme Court authorized Netflix to show a comedy that depicts Jesus as gay after a lower court ordered the streaming service to remove the film from its platform. The Supreme Court's president, Dias Toffoli, ruled late Thursday in favor of Netflix and the comedy group that made the film The First Temptation of Christ. The movie's prompted outrage in Brazil, home to the world's largest Catholic population since its release. Millions of people signed an online petition because, of course, you can't just opt to watch something else. No. You gotta go and fuck with Netflix and try and make sure other people can't see the shit they want to see. Because that makes so much sense. God. On Christmas Eve, at least 4 men were involved in an attack on the headquarters of the comedy group. In his ruling, Toffoli said satire alone did not threaten the Christian faith. Can I just point something out to you? If your God is real, no comedy group can do anything to put an end to that God being real. Comedy does not make things stop existing. Oh, man. Yeah, here's this guy. A satire movie is not going to undermine 2,000 years of history. Yes, you're exactly correct. One movie is not going to undo 2,000 years of Christian history. Unbelievable. Oh, my goodness. Okay. All right. I've had enough of bad news. Let's find my good news link. Where's my good news link? We need some good news, and then we'll change topics here. What do we got? Here we go. Lost VHS tape of baby's first steps found by a stranger at Goodwill and returned to the family. A long-lost tape of a baby taking his first steps was recovered by a determined stranger inside a thrift store VCR. It was actually in a VCR, and then remarkably returned to the family. Jim McKay of Austin, Texas, told Today that he recently discovered the tape in a VCR he had purchased from Goodwill over a year ago. The tape showed a young boy in a diaper taking his first steps with the help of his father and brother in 1994. He was resolute in returning the precious tape to its rightful owners and launched a Facebook campaign to make it happen. Now that's a good use of Facebook. Heck yeah, people. That's a good use of Facebook. I found this family home video in a used VCR from Goodwill here in Texas, he wrote on Sunday. I really want to return it to the family. Can you help share it in your circles? Hopefully this family is still local. Look at a cute kid. Since McKay is a father, he knew how important having such a moment like that on film can be. Good for you, man. I was really emotional seeing that. I recognized it for what it was. People don't film everything they do now. It was a big moment. They set up that camera hoping they would catch it, and they did. Good for him. Good for him. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. What a decent guy, huh? Not only finding the tape, but actually taking the time to find the family and return it. That is, yeah, well played indeed. What a good dude. What a good dude. All right. That's good stuff. That's a good bit of news to end the news segment on. Oh god, that picture is just like my apnea mask. We're not going to look at that because I got to sleep looking like a fighter pilot now. Yeah, so what else you want to talk about? I mean, I already have the word atheism up there. Does anybody have any questions on what atheism is, what it means, what people who are atheists do and don't believe, why, etc.? Ask away. That's always a fun thing. Or feel free to suggest other topics. Philosophical stuff, anything that strikes your fancy. I got time. We've only been at this for an hour. I got time to spend with you folks. So you let me know. You want to see something funny? If I change the word atheism to a giant banner that says Trump sucks, watch how many conservative jerks show up. Yes, I have sleep apnea. I do have sleep apnea. I've been using an apnea mask for several years, and it's miraculous, if you pardon the expression from an atheist, how much better you sleep with that mask and what a difference it makes in your day-to-day life to actually get sleep. It's just night and day. And the new machines are actually pretty cool. You put them on and you start breathing into the mask and it turns the machine on all by itself, turns it off when you take the mask off. I guess it recognizes the difference in air pressure through the hose system. Oh, man. Ugh. Hold on. Speaking of hose, hose mad. Hose mad, people, hose mad. Oh, man. Hose mad. Darn right, hose mad. Oh, man. So I saw that song where the guy's constantly yelling about hose mad, and I made these other images. Hang on, I got other ones here. Hold on. Where'd I put that other one? Here we go. Gotta fix this one for you. Hose mad. Oh no. Who is Pony Tony? Oh god. Hose mad indeed. Okay. That's enough of the hose mad jokes. Oh god, hose mad. Oh boy. Okay, so who is Pony Tony? Tell me about this person, Pony Tony. And yeah, there are a lot of unsavory people streaming around the internet. We did some video analysis from some YouTube stuff a couple of weeks ago about stupid things people said on YouTube. A white supremacist that can't stop getting banned from Twitch. Okay, well, Twitch has a rule I can't speak ill of other Twitch streamers, so I won't. But, you know, if the person keeps getting banned, I can only imagine that Twitch has their reasons for it. You know, they have their terms of service for a reason, and if you do racist stuff, they call you out and they, you know, plant a boot in your butt. So that's why it's always good to follow the terms of service, and why I keep my finger near the mute button for people, you know, the timeout or the ban or the delete, whatever is appropriate depending on what people say. Because number one, saying some of that stuff is just plain wrong on so many levels, but it also puts your channel in jeopardy if you let people do that kind of stuff on your channel. So for a whole bunch of reasons, it's just really, you know, a good idea to not allow that and to not be somebody who promulgates that kind of stuff. There's a Scrabble word for you, huh? Promulgate. Yeah. Promulgate, baby. Use that vocabulary. Use it! As Robin Williams said in that one movie, the point of language is to woo women, and half measures will not suffice for that. So use that vocabulary. You know, be impressive when you speak. Speak. Let's see, what do we got here? Wait, what? No. No. We're not doing that. Bonk. That's not okay, dude. We don't do that. Oh, man. So, yeah, it's, I've seen people show up doing, like, ASCII art flags of, you know, Nazi symbols and making racist commentary and such, and they just get banned off the bat. You know, it's not okay. You know, so I don't let people do that. Mahana, he used the 8-ball thing to ask the 8-ball if I'm a white supremacist, which I find, you know, not okay. But like I said, I'm not banning him. I'm just removing that one comment because I think he didn't mean to be, you know, off color like quite so badly. But yeah, you know, I'm willing to have conservative folks show up and engage in meaningful conversation. It's just when people are jerks, you know, that things become a problem. And speaking of people becoming jerks, let's see who we control here a little bit. Why don't we do that? Let's see if we can get some attention here. Don't worry about it, Russ. You're okay. Let's see what that brings in. It's like casting the net in the water. You know? You got to set the hook. Reel them in a little bit. See what happens. I've done this a couple of times to see whether or not big banners on the screen get more attention than the stream title. And so far, big titles on screen seem to be the way to get viewers' attention pretty quick. So we will see. We will see. You know, if that pans out. So what else do you want to talk about tonight, peeps? Oh, okay, let's see. And yes, you can feel free to post as much gay pride stuff here as you want. I am totally supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. I don't know what the current long list of letters is, but anybody is free to love who they love, to date who they date. You do you, people. Be your best self. That's all I care about. Had a good show early on when I launched this channel where I talked to a fairly popular trans woman Twitch streamer who goes by Lady Raincloud, and that was fantastic. That was a great stream. Very informative. She was tons of entertaining, you know. Be careful with that P on the end of there. because that if you I don't know if you're meaning that to mean pedo, because if you're meaning pedo, that needs to get chopped off of there. You should probably self delete that if that's what you're trying to say, because LGBT does not equate to that like at all, and that is we're not going to associate that. So if that was your intention, let me know and I can delete that, or you can self delete. Um, but again, I will not kick you off the stream, but you should be very cautious. Oh, pan, okay, that's fine. That's fine. I've seen some people who are anti-trans and anti-gay trying to stick a P on the end of there to say that pedos are the same as gay people and such, and that is completely false. Completely false. And it's very irritating when folks try to associate a criminal group with a normal group of people who just happen to be on the LGBTQIA, list or spectrum or whatever the right word is. I'm sorry if my terminology is not perfect, but I'm trying to do my best because I don't understand why. Yeah, that was a 4chan thing. That doesn't surprise me at all. 4chan is like the source of so much bad stuff. Um, I would like to think that there are occasionally good things that come out of 4chan, but most of the stuff you see from there that gains any traction is bad. Oh, man. Whew. Yeah. So yeah, many moons ago, when I was still working for Yahoo, I got in some hot water with the Catholic community. And I don't know if you've been here when I talked about this before, but the short version of this is that I hold the distinction of being the first contributing op-ed writer for Yahoo News to get a piece published that had to get taken down because of public outrage. I was doing a series on belief in America today at the time, and I had wanted to interview Cardinal Dolan of the New York Archdiocese of the Catholic Church as a representative of a major, American Christian influence. And his office was really on board with the idea until they found out I'm an atheist, at which point I totally got the cold shoulder, right? And the 8-ball is funny. So they turned a cold shoulder to me, and then shortly thereafter, Dolan was discovered to have been paying off pedophile priests 20 grand each to retire and disappear quietly before the police could catch them. So I wrote a really scathing article blasting the Catholic Church for that, and Yahoo News posted it, and it lasted 93 minutes before the sheer volume of Catholic backlash made them take it down. So yeah, apparently it's, in their mind, it's worse to say defending pedophiles is wrong than it is to actually defend pedophiles. Like, how does that logic work? But boy, were they mad. And you can, if you know my real name, you can actually Google my real name, and you can still find web pages that are live today from Catholic websites where they were like screaming about how angry they were about that article. It's like still up 7 years later. Actually, 8 years later now, because it was 2012. So yeah, we're in the 8th year. And a lot of those angry web pages are still up. So yeah, I have very little tolerance for that stuff. During the course of writing that series for Yahoo, I actually interviewed one of the heads of the Westboro Baptist Church, the crazy people who picket soldiers' funerals and say, thank God for IEDs and they hate all gay people and whatever else. And I talked to the guy who was at the time their third in command, a fellow named Steve Drain, and he was every bit as insane as you might expect. I mean, he was bonkers. Like, just, off the deep end, like 100 feet underwater and sinking kind of bonkers. When the subject of gay people came up, he said to me that the only acceptable thing for a guy to do if he discovers he's gay, and I am not making this up, these are his exact words, he said, you gotta, he said this with this, like, redneck accent you can't even believe. He says, you gotta get yourself a piece of rusty Kansas barbed wire and lop your junk off with it. And that was like, oh my God, Um, just like crazy. I said to him, "That's kind of specific. Do you spend a lot of time thinking about that?" And he was not happy with me. So yeah. The funny thing about Steve Drain, though, is his daughter is a woman named Lauren Drain, although she got married, so her last name is different now. And she became a professional fitness instructor and fitness model. So she has like a large social media presence and social media following, and like all her pictures are of her in like booty shorts and short shorts and tight pants and bikini tops and whatever, showing off a ton of skin because she's a professional fitness person, and you have to show off the musculature in order to be your own advertisement, right? And it drives Steve Drain nuts to see his daughter in such revealing outfits on the internet. It makes his head explode every time he thinks about it, and I think it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, because she escaped from the cult, the Westboro Baptist Church, and made her own life. So good for her. And Steve Drain, I hope that it gives you nightmares forever. Yeah, I haven't finished setting up the point system on Stream Elements yet, so the slots are not going to work yet. I apologize for that. This channel is new, and I usually use Streamlabs for my other channel. Yeah, irony, right? And I have not figured out all the Stream Elements stuff yet, so you'll have to, forgive me for that one. Yeah, can you imagine being a member of the Westboro Baptist Church? Like, your whole day, all day, every day, all year long, 24/7, 365, is nothing but hate for everybody. Actually, let me see if I can find Lauren Drain to show you. Drain. So, this is Lauren Drain. These pictures are her. Like, my God, the abs. And, look at the guns on her. Holy cow, right? But it drives her father crazy seeing her in these outfits, But if you're a fitness person, you got to be able to show. Here's me looking all fit. Here's me showing off abs and giant quads and whatever else. I mean, good grief. That woman's abs look like she could crack walnuts between like her rows of stomach muscles. But Steve has a near aneurysm anytime this is presented to him, so good, Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But yeah, Lauren Drain escaped from, here's her Wikipedia entry, former member of the Westboro Baptist Church, who wrote in the 2013 book Banished, which chronicles her experiences and eventual banishment from the church. Good for you. Good for you getting out. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, I know. Isn't that great, Mahana? So she got out and, lives her life in a way that drives the other people at the WBC bonkers. So, she's a registered nurse, full-time professional trainer and fitness model. Got married in 2013. Good for her. Still identifies as Christian. That's totally okay. Participated in the No Hate campaign. That probably pissed her dad off something fierce. Yeah. So, showcases fitness routines, strength, and motivational content. Oh, congratulations, they had a kid. Oh, wow. Like less than a week ago, or a week and a half ago, they had their first kid. Good for them. Good for them. Congratulations, Lauren Drain. Huh. Good on her. Good on her husband. The whole thing. Congratulations. But yeah, Steve Drain, whole other ball of wax. In fact, I have an idea. Let's talk about that. So this is the guy that I talked to, Steve Drain. Let's see. Let's see what Steve has to say. By the gift of his and blah, blah, blah. Where's Steve?
as the head of the church.
Not by us.
Not by you.
And I told you, goes is going to.
Margie Phelps is the wife of the
Gets
late
invested.
Fred Phelps, who founded the WBC.
And thinking one human comes or goes is going to change what happens here. That's when they get tripped up.
Fred, for years, was seen as the head of the church.
Not by us.
Not by you.
And I told you a bit ago, we told you that repeatedly.
Right.
You being everyone out there, not necessarily you personally.
Christ.
We told you repeatedly it was a democracy. He told you all repeatedly. The very minute this church doesn't want me preaching, I won't be preaching. Our org chart is a flat line with Christ. Christ, a flat line.
There were rumors for years that Fred had passed away. It was,
That was
I'm
called the
sure-
annual wishful thinking, as far as I
we
can
used to
tell.
get Steve
Well, I mean,
Fry or somebody calling us about every
Well,
year to check
And
it
he
out.
had 8 or 10 or 20 different diseases.
Yeah.
Yes. There are other people that said he had passed away and you guys were covering it up.
Well,
I'm sure you guys have heard all of this, but can you address what his death did mean to the church?
that he was dead.
Wow, isn't that just a nice thing? That was her husband that she's talking about right there. Just so that you know. What did his death mean? He was dead. Like, that's love right there, people. Holy shit. Yeah. So, let's see. What else does Steve Drain have to say? Oh, boy.
Well, there's no question that, you
If I misunderstood, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. But I want to be careful to make a distinction between personality and doctrine. Doctrine is doctrine. And you have sound doctrine and you have unsound doctrine. And of course the Lord amplifies our understanding, in great measure. From a personality standpoint, I can tell you that I think that the church has become less, this might not be a great use of the word, but homogenous
Less uniform.
in terms of, you have that concept not only from an upbringing, but also from a genetic perspective where the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Well, we have more trees now. You know what I mean? So in other words, I certainly don't mean anything by this from a perspective of, you have the Phelps, and although there are many different personalities there, I mean, there's no question, but that when you have people come in that didn't have that same upbringing and don't have that same general genetic, and you have the Hockenbargers,
Right.
So, this is a guy who's literally talking eugenics amongst his fellow congregants. Like, let's keep track of who's got the pure bloodline. Like, come on, man. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, who are you, Dr. Mengele? Like, holy shit. Oh. What else? Oh, there's an actual video of Lauren Drain begging her family to not be a bunch of asshats. Oh, God. What do we got from Steve Drain about... Oh, here we go. This ought to be good. Actually, I'm almost scared to have this on here because it looks like he's going to start dropping the F-bomb a bunch. But, yeah, so that's the kind of thing that you see from Steve Drain in the Westboro Baptist Church. They are absolutely bonkers. Let's... So let's see some images here. Thank God for dead soldiers, they say. God hates America. Thank God for IEDs, which are the improvised explosive devices that kill Americans in their convoys. So, yeah, they're out of their friggin' gourds. Like, there's just no question. They are just nutso cray-cray. You know? Nutso cray-cray. And the thing about them that's really disturbing, and this is something I've gotten into a lot of arguments with people about, because they don't like hearing this. This is the unfortunate truth about them, is that as despicable as these people's, activities may seem, they're completely scripturally justifiable according to the word of the Bible. Nothing these guys have done, none of the hateful stuff these guys have done, is not something that the Bible accepts, promotes, justifies, whatever. There are parts of the Christian Bible that most practitioners just disregard as being beyond the pale of anything a normal human being would want to believe. But that doesn't mean those things are not present in the Bible. And these people embrace all the most horrific stuff. So, is the stuff they believe awful? I would say it seems pretty awful to me. But it's reflective of the worst parts of Christian scripture. It's not Christian, it's absolutely Christian, just in the most abrasive, abusive, unethical, immoral, and harmful kind of way. Which is one of my arguments against a lot of the scriptures of the world's religions, is that almost all of them contain stuff that can produce people like the Westboro Baptist Church. And again, they're completely justified. You can't condemn them for going against the teachings of Christianity because, yes, it is exactly that. It's the toxic form of Christianity. And that's a tough pill for a lot of religious folks to swallow, because they don't want to feel like their faith could ever, contain these things, but it does. And that's the part these people focus on, is the horrible stuff. But it's all there. It's all part of the same scriptural doctrine. So I've often told Christians, if you want to claim moral authority, you have to be willing to roundly condemn the kinds of people who do stuff like the Westboro Baptist Church does, and you have to push for your institutions of faith to excise that stuff from the scripture as the horror that it actually is, and stop considering it to be equally the word of a God. If you really feel like this is not what your religion should represent. But of course, that is always met with quite a lot of resistance. So there you have it. It's a challenge. So yeah, I have to say, we've had that Trump bad thing up for several minutes, and we haven't had any right-wing nutjobs show up to scream at me yet. I am more than a little surprised. We've seen some really difficult people come by when you put that kind of bait in the water. It's okay, Russ, take your time. I'll be here for a few more minutes. So yeah, Steve Drain, not the best of all human beings as far as I'm concerned. But, he has the legal right to practice his religion the way he does. And that's upsetting to people like me. But, I don't have the ability to change his beliefs. I don't have the ability to change what he thinks or feels. And I'm not sure I would try to, even if I could, because I don't think it's really my place to tell him he can't believe the way he believes. What I feel like I can be justified in doing is saying he's not allowed to inflict that on other people without their consent. But I don't have the right to tell anybody what they're allowed to believe as far as their spirituality goes. I just hope that people will apply, a bit of reason and rationality and morality and concern for their fellow human beings before embracing parts of Scripture that turn people into folks like the members of the WBC. Because that's such an unpleasant outcome, these people are shunned by the entirety of the society that they exist within. I mean, and as far as I'm concerned, rightly so. The unfortunate side effect of that, of course, is it leaves them feeling more strongly bonded together because they have a common enemy in the form of literally everybody outside their tiny congregation. You know, and feeling like one has common enemies builds bonds. You know, it's an unfortunate fact of life. So, yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, those guys were kind of bonkers. So, yeah. So we have somebody in the chat named Living Martyr Report, and I'm wondering, you know, who you are, and if you want to say hello. I don't usually call out lurkers, but your name is really unusual, and I'm trying to figure out if there's some kind of meaning to it, or if you are, you know, listening quietly but have opinions you'd like to share. So let me know. Let me know. What else is going on here? News. That's what I was looking for. News bloopers. Let's look for something funny here. Oh, man. Got a stiff neck tonight. Alright, let's see what this is.
Can I help you?
It's an ad, is what it
Do
is.
all these sleep things
Let
really
me
help?
skip the ad, please.
have
Thank
that.
you. Okay. Wow, somebody botched the logo on that, eh? Oh, these poor people cracking up.
Welcome back to the Morning Blend.
Look at the cackling. It's great. Oh, man. I love bloopers. I love bloopers.
Experience matters when it comes to selling things you don't want. Las Vegas Coin Company, they have decades of knowledge.
You can't even get the words off the teleprompter without cracking up. That's beautiful.
Whether it's about coins, collectibles, jewelry, watches, and more.
Listen, our friend John Jankowski is back. He's the owner of Las Vegas Coin Company. The problem is, we've realized that the three of us have
All three of them are totally losing it. It's beautiful.
a lot of fun together. So bear with us, guys, because we've started off. We were trying not to laugh at the beginning, but here we go.
Okay.
Anyhow,
Rain chances today.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let's see what the weather has to say here.
But I got to put them on the table. Got to bring the ketchup if you want burgers. I think it's the saying. That's the saying.
What? What? Those ribs were good, weren't they? So all of a sudden, Bob Sauce is the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Won't be till tomorrow when it feels like 107 again. So make sure you stay hydrated tomorrow.
Oh, there's one anchor covering her face up so she's not cracking up on camera. That's great.
It's a combination of Prada cologne, rib smoke,
Stop talking.
perspiration.
Stop talking.
Here's a sample.
She's going, stop talking, stop talking.
That again on Thursday, especially in. Oh God. This is you. This is all you. Bye. Okay. Hope you enjoy your forecast. I'm leaving. Bye. No one that cackle is coming from Javier. Oh no! No one can.
Creepy clowns.
Like a scary clown. I do not like this. What is going on? Why are you here? Is it over?
It's not over yet.
It's not over yet.
Would it help if you know the scary clown has donuts? Not
No,
really.
not really.
Huh?
No.
You don't want those donuts? But okay, so Scary Clown Hurts Donuts is delivering donuts. Evil clown. Still
Get
here.
away.
He's
I'm
not
not
going
opening
away.
my
He's
eyes.
not
I'm
going
not
away.
opening
No,
my eyes.
I'm not opening my eyes.
Tears have already been shed in the newsroom, is my understanding. So thanks for the donuts.
Bye.
Are they
Maybe
good?
Bob doesn't mind. Look.
Yeah. They're
Nice donuts. I'll give them
Bob,
that.
you
They're
can
very
escort the
artistic.
clown out now? What
Can you do
say?
that for us?
Why are you getting
All right, another ad. So many ads. Oh my God, that clown.
Truth be
happened?
Javier had nothing to do with it.
Oh, that clown. Nope, I would not hug that clown. I would totally not hug that clown. Nope, 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 nope. Nope, nope, nope. Oh, one guy's doing it. I would not be on board with that.
Aren't we? Are we moving on?
I would not be. Nope, nope, nope.
What we're gonna do.
Clowns, man. So horrible.
Is we're gonna have you do a simpler pass. So Riel's gonna come on back, and she's just gonna show you what we call a straight jump. So you're gonna touch the trampoline 3 times. Straight jump, tuck jump, tuck jump.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna go.
Oh no, somebody's gonna botch that.
Let's go, Shim. So straight, tuck, tuck.
I can do that. Let's go to airport traffic.
Oh no. Oh man, that poor guy. His family probably never gonna let him live that down ever.
Here's a live look at the boulevard. Come on, let's go bumping down the boulevard. There you go. There you go. Right through the Wissahickon train station. A little sun glare in there. You all right? All right. Go sit down. Okay. Westbound on the Schuylkill Expressway, we had that overnight accident with the tractor trailer. Took down some of the easy pass signs. Peter Cottontail on the way, doing the steamroller. All right, south on 95 between 413 and Academy Road, and we're getting set up for the big concert, of course. Oh, the
sprinkler. Oh my God.
Welcome back to.
Never do that again, dude. Never.
Ozark Spots AM. It's time to check in with the news desk for today's headlines. Good morning, Joe.
Oh, Jeremy! That looks like Lauren. I want to do my best Joe impersonation.
I'm sorry. Good morning, Lauren.
Jeremy!
He's so gone.
Oh my gosh, we're not going to have time for very much news. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Morano.
Places like Minneapolis.
Oh my God. Anybody else notice how much product it must take in these people's hair on the news to keep it to stay that still?
Police in Denver, and Denver's very high up.
There's no snow in the forecast.
Oh dear. Well, that's
that
the
your watch?
Yeah, that's my watch saying there's no snow.
There you go.
There's no snow in the forecast.
I heard about these. I've never.
In the forecast. Goodness, apologies
Did you just
for that.
trigger that?
Well, obviously it was listening to what I was saying. Apologies for that. That was not part of the plan. There is snow in.
There is snow in your forecast, I thought.
Yeah, but it's probably doesn't know what place I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
Off you go.
yeah, off you go. Oh my goodness. Should have taken it off.
Oh man. Okay, so it's about 10:45. I think I'm gonna wrap up here pretty soon and see what's going. Oh wait, here we go. Living Martyr Report. As a conservative, Trump is the best president in my lifetime. Okay, Trump's done more for conservationism. Can you tell me what you mean by conservationism? Because conservationism is basically the desire to do things like save the trees. Than any other president in my lifetime, including Reagan, and Reagan didn't have the hellhole leftist bias Trump has had to deal with. So, okay, well, first, welcome. I see you've got some pretty strong opinions about Trump. Let's talk about that. You say Trump is the best president in your lifetime. What is it that Trump has done that you feel is spectacularly good? Like, what do you think Trump has accomplished that is good for the United States? I'm curious. Okay, so you meant conservatism, okay. I would argue that. I think that his activities have made conservatives look kind of bad. and in fact have made the United States kind of a laughing stock globally. So I wouldn't say he's done the conservative movement any big favors. He's made their image really go down in terms of how it's perceived globally. My company gave me $1,000 after the tax breaks. Okay. I can't verify or deny that. But so what? Is that necessarily something that makes him the best president in your lifetime? Because if that's all you're using as a justification for it, then you could say that Andrew Yang's plan would make him an even better president than Trump, because you would end up getting a lot more than $1,000 a year from Andrew Yang's proposals. So, that doesn't really stand out as something that makes Trump the best president in your lifetime. I mean, actually, I don't know for sure, because I don't know how long you've been alive. I don't know how old you are. Can you give me some kind of idea how old you are? Because it would help to know what presidencies you have lived through. I mean, if Trump is like the first president you've ever had a chance to vote for, then, he's the only president in your lifetime as far as your voting ability is concerned. So I don't really know enough about your circumstance to have an opinion on that. But, just the $1,000 in difference in taxes does not necessarily make a president great. He knew the climate change Paris Accord is a waste of money, and you're 51 years of age. Okay, so we're of about the same age. Me being very close to 49 years old at this point, so we're in the same age category. So I have to ask, do you believe that climate change is actually a problem? Because that is obviously going to be foundational to how you perceive things like the Paris Accord. Wow, this is taking a while for you to reply. It sounds like you might be writing something pretty significantly long, so that's interesting. The climate is always changing, yes. Have you heard of Tony Heller? No, I do not know who Tony Heller is. But what I'm asking is, do you think that climate change is a problem? I'm not asking if you think the climate is changing. I'm asking if you think it's a problem. It's not really disputable that climate is changing. The numbers bear it out, so there's really nothing to argue there. The question is whether or not you believe it to be a problem. Meanwhile, let's Google Tony Heller. Whoops. God, I can't spell today. Tony Heller. Okay. Tony Heller. Okay. So it sounds to me like Tony Heller is somebody with an opinion on climate change. No, you don't believe it to be a problem. Okay. Who is Tony Heller? Let's see this. BS in Geology, okay. Master's Electrical Engineering. Boston University Geology, Northern... Okay, well, saying Boston University Geology doesn't tell us if he, was awarded a degree from these places. But I would strongly doubt anybody who claims to have 6 collegiate degrees like that. But even so, let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that he does actually have degrees in geology, electrical engineering, geology, computer science, and geochemistry. None of those is meteorology. So even if this is accurate, none of it is on point. We're not asking questions about rocks, we're talking about climate. Lifelong environmentalist, nobody cares. Testified in Congress, not really relevant. Fought for the Clean Air and Water Act, that's good at least. Wilderness Ranger has nothing to do with climate change. Wilderness Ranger has nothing to do with climate change. Currently battling the city of Boulder to stop development on wetlands. Maybe good, maybe not. I don't know enough about that, but still nothing to do with climate change. Full-time cyclist, nothing to do with climate change. Teacher, nothing to do with climate change. Science teacher, unless it's in meteorology, nothing to do with climate change. Athletic director and soccer coach, nothing to do with climate change. Math teacher, nothing to do with climate change. Computer instructor, nothing to do with climate change. So nothing I'm seeing here has, so far has anything to do with climate change. Let's see. Great. So he did some stuff related to computer science, related to a computer that does something related to weather, which does not make him an expert on climate change. Nothing I'm seeing here verifies that he has any expertise on that subject matter. If he was, in fact, somebody who has a degree in geology, he might be somebody to talk to about geology. If he has one in electrical engineering, he might be somebody to talk to about optimal loading of circuits. But that does not have to do with weather and climate. I would imagine if you were to Google the phrase climate scientists, you might get a large list of them, but I don't have a specific person that I look at as the authority on that particular subject. What I can say is, nothing I'm seeing here gives any indication whatsoever that this guy has any expertise in, as an authority on climate change whatsoever. So have I heard of the guy? Not until today. Nothing I'm seeing here gives me any reason to feel like his opinion should matter in the least about climate change. The fact that he has his own blog called Real Climate Science, rather than being published in peer-reviewed journals, is another indicator that the guy is not a genuine authority. So I wouldn't take him seriously. That's just not something that I would regard as a major person to turn to. So, yeah, okay. So you believe climate change is not a problem. Tell me what makes you think that the climate changing is not a problem? Because from where I sit, it's absolutely a problem because climate dictates things like where and what kinds of crops you can grow, which means that climate change will have an impact on global food supply. I don't know about you, but I regard having a substantial and sufficient food supply as being important, and since climate change affects that, that alone should make it seem important to everybody. That's sad because you should open your mind. There's a difference between having an open mind and accepting the input from a non-expert as if the person were an expert. Watching his videos will not make him an expert on this topic. He actually uses graphs the scientists use. Again, having the graph does not mean you are qualified to interpret it or to have an authoritative opinion on it. That's not really a useful thing. If you have somebody who's actually a climate scientist, somebody who's got degrees in things like meteorology and agriculture so they can understand both the weather and climate aspect of it and how it affects food supply and such, that might be somebody with an opinion to listen to. But a geologist and computer scientist is not somebody who can claim their credentials make them an expert on climate science. But yeah, ask your question. Maybe we should take a look at this video debunking Heller. But I will spare you
a few days
going
ago,
through that unless you can give some reason why we should even consider Heller's idea as relevant in the first place. Oh, hi Bella. My dog is coming to say hello. In case you're a dog person, Labradoodles are a very fun breed. Heller debunked that already. Can't say I really care. Why should I believe climate extinction? Who said anything about climate extinction? When there's 50 years of failed predictions. First, again, I'm not sure where you're getting the phrase climate extinction from. But, okay, maybe you could explain what climate extinction is and where you're getting that term, because I'm not aware of any of the established science for it talking about... Okay, Jane Fonda is also not a climate scientist, as far as I'm aware. 50 years of failed... Okay, CEI.org. Let's see what CEI is. Competitive Enterprise Institute. This ought to be amusing to Google, I gotta say. Competitive Enterprise Institute. Whoops, Competitive Enterprise Institute. Okay, so it's a nonprofit libertarian think tank to promote the ideas of limited government, free enterprise, in other words, all the stuff that libertarians are about. None of that has anything to do with being an expert on climate science. I'm not sure why we should take it that as serious. But you can point to 50 failed predictions, but that doesn't mean that the numbers about the way the climate is behaving over the past 50 years are somehow not the numbers that we have for the last 50 years. Again, it's not relevant. People made predictions that are wrong for a long time. If you want to say that having some wrong predictions invalidates something, then by definition you would be saying that the entire Christian faith can be invalidated because it's been making predictions of the end times for the last 2,000 years, including many, many, many of them with very specific dates that have all failed to happen. So if your dipstick by which you're going to measure this stuff is if some predictions by people who are, making predictions for whatever reason have failed, that the entire thing should be thrown out, then you should throw out the entire Christian faith as well. You shouldn't believe predictions per se. You should be able to look at the climate figures as they have been established for however long we've been tracking climate figures, and you should be able to see that the numbers trend in a specific direction. It's not... you admitted yourself that you believe climate is changing. So I fail to see where the problem is with that. And as far as, the problems with agriculture, that's not predictive. There's factual stuff about that. And I speak as somebody who has spent a large part of his life actually working on farms, raising crops and raising livestock and things like that. That crops grow in certain climate and soil conditions. And if those conditions change, then the crop output changes, or even the crop possibility changes. If climate changes by too much in a specific region, certain crops will no longer grow there. So, we're not talking about some kind of weird prediction. We're talking about you can track the numbers, you can see that climate is in fact changing, and you can tell by, knowing how crops and agriculture work, what temperature conditions certain plants thrive in and which ones will kill them. And you can see that we're trending toward some of these conditions changing. So what's not to believe there? We have had 5 extinctions already. That's why I believe climate is always changing. We've had 5 mass extinctions so far. Some scientists believe we're in the middle of a 6th right now as we speak. I find that to be very plausible. I am not an expert in the field, so I can't verify it with my own expertise. But in my own lifetime, I've seen many, many reports of extinctions of specific species. So it's not hard for me to believe that we're seeing extinction of, large numbers of species at the moment. But I am not an expert who can claim to have the knowledge of that on a global scale. Hang on just a second. My dog is trying to get my attention. you're a dog person, but when your dog tries to get your attention, sometimes you got to actually check out what the dog's doing. But yeah, so so far you have cited a guy who's apparently widely debunked as somebody not to listen to, who by his own admission has no expertise in these events, and whose only major source of publication is his own blog, and some people who are trying to debunk an entire movement based on some predictions that have not come true on a website that has nothing to do with climate science but is actually a libertarian political website. None of that screams reliable scientific fact. But, again, the better question is, why do you not care about climate change when you can prove, and this is absolutely correct, that crops grow and do not grow based on climate and soil conditions? Why does that not seem important to you? Okay, so let me see if I understand your position here. Aside from us both loving dogs, about which I applaud, if your reaction to the possibility of an extinction coming up is so what, I'm not sure there's anything further to discuss, because if you don't see the value in trying to prevent the extinction of your species, then you don't care enough about the survival of the human race to care about the things that might cause it to end. So there's not much of a discussion to have there. You say, let's deal with it. Hi, Russ. Living Martyr Report is talking about climate subjects at the moment, so we're having a discussion here. And you say, why cause hysteria to frighten young people? Because the possibility of a planet being rendered unfit for the current human population of it is something about which to be very scared. If that is the course that we are on, then it is vitally important for us to recognize it and take whatever steps we can to prevent that outcome or mitigate the effects of it. Stream is going okay. I think Living Martyr has some sources for his information that don't stand up to the test of being valid scientific sources. He's got one guy who is very obviously a scientist, but not in the field of climate change, who speaks a lot about climate change. So that alone kind of disqualifies him as having the expertise to really have an authoritative opinion. And the other article he pointed to talks about some predictions some people made over some period of time, which does not actually mean climate change is not happening or is not something to be concerned about. How does one check the validity of the source? So one of the first things you want to do when you're looking at sources is find out, first of all, does the source actually have expertise in the field being discussed? So if you have a question about astrophysics, you want to use sources that are experts in astrophysics. If you have a question about cardiology, you want to talk to a cardiologist, right? The second thing is you look at the topic you're discussing and you ask, is the information that's being presented testable? Is it verifiable? And you verify what can be verified. And if the information is not verifiable, then it's often little more than opinion. So you need to make sure that your information is coming from sources that actually have the necessary training and background to provide useful information. You need to make sure the information that they're providing, if, for example, you're talking about something in science, actually comes from the use of the scientific method, from observation of actual verifiable data. You don't just take opinion pieces as being fact. Living Martyr Report says, why do you care about whether the extinction of our species happens? Because I want to survive, and I want the descendants in my family to survive. We all die and nobody will remember our existence. Do you know who George Washington was? Do you know who Socrates was? Do you know who Julius Caesar was? If you're a religious person, do you know who Buddha or Allah or Jesus or Moses were? Because saying that nobody will remember our existence is not accurate. The memory of people can and frequently does persist long past their lifespan. Even if the memory of them does not last past their lifespan, the effects of their lives can last past their lifespan, particularly if they had children who survived their death. Again, you're making a broad general statement. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that I have 5 kids who survive to adulthood and have full and happy lives. Does it matter to them that I existed? Of course it does, because without my existence, they wouldn't be there. So again, it may not matter to the dead person, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter, period, as an expansive, broad statement. Also, I have to say, if you think so little of your own impact on the world to think nothing you do matters, that's somewhat nihilistic of you, and nihilism doesn't really lead to any kind of useful conversation, because this nothing matters mindset is both kind of absolutist and very negative, and doesn't allow for injection of different opinion. You know, if you're a nihilist, that's for you to feel, but that doesn't mean that nihilism is correct. It doesn't mean nothing matters, and it doesn't mean the lives and contributions of other human beings are meaningless. And it doesn't mean that once somebody dies, the contributions they made never matter in any way again. I mean, Jonas Salk is dead as last week's fish, but his vaccine means a whole hell of a lot to the entire human population. I'm agnostic. I happen to be an atheist, so... And just so you know, agnostic and atheist are not mutually exclusive. I am what's called an agnostic atheist. You can be a Gnostic or agnostic atheist. I am an agnostic atheist. But we're kind of going off on a tangent here, because you said, we originally were talking about whether or not Trump was, as you claimed, the best president in your lifetime. And one of the examples you cited was he pulled us out of the climate accords. So you've been trying to justify the idea that climate change is meaningless ever since then. And the fact that climate change directly impacts global food supply, and global food supply directly impacts the survival of every living thing on the planet, particularly those of us who are humans and rely on agriculture for food, but not just us, because if you change what plants can grow where, entire ecosystems can collapse. Then pulling out of the Paris Climate Change Accords was not just a bad idea, but it was a boneheaded and idiotic idea. And if you don't understand that climate change is important to global food supply, then you have more research to do. So saying that pulling out of the Paris Climate Change Accord is a sign that Trump is the best president that you've ever seen, you are using something that actually is demonstrative that he makes really bad policy decisions, as if it were a justification for calling him a very good president. So you should probably offer some other examples of why you think Trump is the best president that you've ever seen, because having taken an action that is against the idea of human survival doesn't really justify a president being called the best that we've ever had. Hang on a second, my dog is growling. I gotta tend to her for a second, but Russ obviously has an opinion there. You guys talk for a second until I get back. When the dog starts making the I need to go potty sounds, you kind of got to pay attention to that. Let's see. trade war is lost. Yeah, we're not doing fantastically well in the trade war. One of the challenges with outsourcing so much labor, outsourcing so much industry, production, manufacture, even services to foreign countries means that we have to pay to bring the results of those businesses back to the United States. And especially when it comes to China, we have a huge trade deficit with China, which is created entirely by the fact that so many American businesses have chosen to take advantage of the cheap labor there at the expense of the well-being of the American working class just to make a few more bucks for themselves. So that's a problem that isn't so great, but that's not entirely of Trump's doing. We can't lay that as at the feet of Trump as just a flaw with Trump. I mean, he has not done anything that has really fixed the problem. He has exacerbated it, but he is not solely responsible for that. So I can't use that as a Trump good, Trump bad, everybody else good kind of thing. Yes, capitalism is the root reason why the exporting of those jobs happens. The exporting of all that manufacturing happens. But I'm still waiting for Living Martyr Report to give another reason why he thinks, or I'm assuming you're a guy, Living Martyr Report. If that's incorrect, let me know. But he still needs to give some better reasons for saying that Trump is the best president in his entire life. Because so far the only reason why is something that doesn't really hold water. Wasting billions to other third world countries to suck our money to pretend they are using it for climate change is smart. Okay. So first, you would have to demonstrate that money is being wasted. Second, you would have to say that third world countries are, quote, sucking our money to pretend they are using it for climate change. You've presented no factual evidence of that whatsoever. You just say you believe it and that anybody who disagrees is naive and ridiculous. And that doesn't hold any water here. You have to be able to justify your opinions here. If they're your opinions, then that's fine. But none of that still constitutes a reason why Trump is a great president. Because again, even if the Paris Climate Accords are very expensive, the extermination of the human species due to a crop failure that causes, global starvation because we can no longer grow food in the places that we want to be able to grow food, is something that it is worth spending exorbitant sums of money to prevent. A large portion of America agrees that the stealing of our money for spreading the wealth across the world is absolutely wrong. A large portion of America actually believes the world is flat, that Elvis is still alive, and that aliens show up here to anally probe farmers and mutilate cattle. So, you're committing a metric ton of logical fallacies there, and just holding these opinions is not validation of those opinions. You can believe it all you want, but your belief in it doesn't make you correct. You have to be able to prove these things. This stream is meant for a lot of things. Usually we start with a news wrap-up where we look at the wire services and talk about what news items have come through the wire that day. But yes, discussion is generally welcome here as long as it's, kept reasonably free of screaming and obscenity. I have to say your username strikes me as kind of anti-Semitic, and I'm going to have to be cautious about what I allow you to do here because of that. I have to be aware of terms of service concerns and such, so I don't mean to be overly down on you, but you've chosen a username that is, by its nature, controversial, so I have to be cautious regarding you. What part of what he said was wrong? It's not a question of what part he said was wrong. It's a question of he's making some broad and expansive claims with no evidence to back them up whatsoever. And he's committing a ton of logical fallacies at the same time. Like things like saying, a large part of America agrees X does not actually mean that that large part of America is right. For the same reason that a large part of the human population believing the world was flat didn't make them correct. A large part of the world believing that the Earth was the center of the universe and the sun orbits us instead of the other way around did not make them correct. So you don't just get to say lots of people believe X as if that actually proves the claim. it only means that a large part of the, of a large group of people believes it. It says nothing about the accuracy of what they believe. Logical fallacies. Okay. Logical fallacies are, well, I mean, there are a lot of them. I'll put up an image on the screen in a couple of minutes, but by and large, they are examples of when an argument is constructed that fails to meet the standards of logic or fails to follow a logical form. So, like, one of them is, and this is one that as an atheist you run into a lot, it's called the argument from personal incredulity. Like, I can't believe the universe came from some other way, therefore God. Not being able to believe that something happened that you don't understand doesn't mean you get to claim magic explanation A, B, or C. You follow? So those are logical fallacies. Let me see if I can find, there's a popular chart of them. Hold on, logical fallacy chart. Here we go. Here's some good ones. Let's see. This is probably one of the best ones if I can get a good large image of it. Is this? This is a poster. I don't know if I can use this one. Let's see. View image. All right. Let's do. Okay. So, yeah, the resolution on that is garbage, so it's not going to be great. Surely there must be a larger one here. Tools, size, large. Okay, let's try this version. Oh, there we go. That looks like a nice big version. View image. Okay, so this is one where we can zoom in and get a pretty good thing. So false cause fallacy is presuming that a real or perceived relationship between things means that one is the cause of the other. The ad hominem, where you attack a person instead of the argument, is a logical fallacy. Bandwagon, appealing to, that's the one that Living Martyr actually committed. Appealing to popularity or the fact that many people do something as an attempted form of validation. It's called the bandwagon fallacy. So you have to actually have valid basis for these things. Living Martyr, can you? I can't show you where the money is because I haven't done the research. Do you have a specific reputable report that shows where every dollar of that money has gone? I don't. Yeah, you're correct, but you don't need lab coats to back you up. Sometimes you just use logic and believe what is most related to truth. Not true. You were getting close to being on point until you said you use what you believe what is most related to truth. It doesn't matter what you believe is most related to truth. It matters what actually is the truth. And that's a very important distinction. Do you believe the Bible had anything to do with your reasoning of objective morality? No, I don't believe the Bible to be accurate, and I don't use it as a foundation for pretty much anything as far as I can tell. The appeal to ignorance and the appeal to authority. Yes, those are very popular ones too. Let me see if I can... there's the appeal to authority. Hang on, let me see if I can move over there. Saying that because an authority thinks something, it must therefore be true. That's a common fallacy. Even people who have great knowledge are not always correct. Let's see. Yeah, this is a good chart. And welcome, Copter. I know that you're just pulling my leg. Then how can you tell me I'm wrong about the Paris Accords when you don't have the data? I am telling you, you have made a claim about them that you have not substantiated. It's not my job to prove your claim is true. It is your job to prove it's true. I don't have to prove it's false either. You're the one who has to prove your own claim. For the same reason that if somebody says Superman is real, I don't have to prove he isn't. It's their job to prove that he is. You don't just get to shift the burden of proof onto me because you failed to actually back up your argument. Copter, I know you better, and I'm not even going to try to change your mind. You're also probably going to eventually start talking about nuclear squid launchers, so, you know. I'm not that worried about that. Copter is a pal from both of my streams, and we game together. He's here to yank my chain a little, I'm sure. But he's a good-natured fella, so don't take him as being, you know, attacking anything. He really means no harm. So yeah, since your claim was specifically that the money spent on the Paris Accords is wasted, you would have to demonstrate that. You would say that third world countries are there to suck our money. You would have to prove that. You said they are pretending to use it to do something about climate change. You would have to prove that. You said to believe otherwise is naive and ridiculous. That's a useless claim to make because you have not proven anything you've said so far in that paragraph. And then you admit it's just your opinion, which is true. It's just your opinion. You have not provided facts to back it up. And then you say a large part of America agrees. That's the bandwagon fallacy. And you say that the stealing of our money, that's a loaded question fallacy. You're assuming those monies have been stolen. But you also say for spreading the wealth across the world is absolutely wrong. You have not proven our money is being stolen. You have not proven that the reason for such theft, should it have occurred, was to spread wealth across the world. And you have not given any reason to think that just because a number of people may agree with you, that somehow makes the statement you made correct. So you have to do better if you want your opinion to be seen as having validity here. Opinion is just opinion. There's the old saying about, you know, opinions being like assholes, etc., because everybody's got one. You have to be able to back them up. Why is begging the question a fallacy? A circular argument in which the conclusion is included in the premise. Here's an example. The word of Zorbo the Great is flawless and perfect. We know this because it says so in the great and infallible book of Zorbo's best and most truest things that are definitely true and should not ever be questioned. So what you're doing is you're assuming your premise is true and then just moving it into the conclusion. That's why it doesn't work. You don't just get to assume that the premise is true. Living Martyr Report says, I'm out, bro. For you to dismiss Tony Heller as a bullshit artist is typical of a leftist that doesn't want to do the research. He's totally legit and being ignored by the media for his fat-based videos. I assume you meant fact. If you feel like being asked to back up your sources means you have to leave rather than continuing the discussion, that's on you. But you pointed out who Tony Heller is. I Googled him. I went to his own website where he lists his own credentials, and you're using him as an authority on climate change, and his own handwritten list of his own credentials mentions zero about having any expertise in climate science. Your own source, listing his own qualifications, omits anything that would make him an actual expert on the subject matter. What else should somebody make of that than this person is not an expert in the subject matter? You know, I don't know why you would think any other conclusion would be warranted there. So, you know, by the way, I'm not saying that he is necessarily wrong. I'm saying that as a non-expert, he should not be assumed to be correct. So before you can use him as a source that anybody should take seriously, you have to demonstrate that his information is correct. For the same reason, if you were to tell me about what Superman wore to dinner last night, you would have to prove that Superman is real and that you would have some way of knowing what he wore to dinner last night. This kind of thing, by the way, is why I find it so reprehensible that American educational institutions do not teach courses in logic and how to formulate an argument, because people make well-intentioned statements really feeling like they've got solid points to make, and they don't understand that what they're saying doesn't hold any logical weight. Simply because they've never been instructed in this stuff. They've never taken a class in it, for the most part. Same thing with civics, actually. I believe that civics needs to be something that we focus more on so people understand the way their own government works in this country. But these are classes you don't see a ton of in American education. There you go, Copter. You're going to be the first man to drop an atomic squid from space. Okay. Nietzsche, I was going to go into some things about that link posted earlier about articles published in newspapers. It's all debunked stuff, and the media takes things out of perspective too. How do you know what is true then if you need the government or some trusted source to confirm everything you reference? Good question. You start with the claim, okay? And then you look at the evidence presented to support it, and then you evaluate whether or not it's true. And when it comes to science, the best method we have for this is the scientific method. But you should immediately discard anything based on a logical fallacy as a source of truth. You can look at it as something interesting to think about or to ponder or to discuss, but if something is based on a logical fallacy, it cannot be relied upon to be true. Please watch some of his videos. My God, they are so fact-based and expose the truth of the scientific data. I'm not trying to be an asshole. Just give his videos a try. I did not say I would not ever watch some of his videos or look at anything he had ever written. I'm saying that I can't take the guy as an authority at face value because his own citation of his, education and experience and credentialing eliminates him as an expert on the subject matter. He may have some videos that have some very interesting points to make, and some of them may be very accurate. What I'm saying is, I can't assume that based on what he even says about himself. If you were trying to find out information about how to help you get better after a heart attack, you probably wouldn't talk to a podiatrist. Even though the person's actually a doctor, they're not an expert. And you certainly would not go asking your local astrophysicist for information on how to get better after a heart attack, right? An astrophysicist is an intensely educated person, but their expertise is somewhere else, right? The guy you're talking about's expertise is in geology and electrical engineering, if if his own self-published list of credentials is to be believed. Nothing he says gives him any foundational knowledge, education, or training in climate science. So, he may have some useful stuff to say, but until I've had a chance to evaluate it, I'm not going to use it as a foundational part of a discussion, assuming that it is true, because I haven't confirmed that yet. Also, Barebones' wedding is in April. Oh, you mean your wedding is in April? Okay. I was about to say, I've been married over 20 years, man. I don't think I've got another wedding coming up in April, but I realize you're talking about you. Again, geology is not climate science. Electrical engineering is not climate science. We already went through this. Just listing the words Rice University, Boston University, Geology, Northern Arizona University, Computer Science, he's not claiming he even has degrees from those places, but even if he did, in the subjects being listed, none of it is climate science. The fact that he testified in front of Congress in support of wilderness does not make him a climate scientist. Despite the fact that he believes in the Clean Air and Water Acts does not make him a climate scientist. Neither does having been a park ranger. Okay? None of that stuff qualifies him as a climate scientist. Nietzsche says, as models improved and data gathering and technology improved, we're still at a point where observation in the environment, things such as permafrost thaw and erosion and glacial movements, are outpacing the more aggressive model runs. Do you have any specific studies you've been looking at, Nietzsche? I didn't say he's a dummy. I said he's not a climate scientist. Again, just like I said earlier, an astrophysicist is anything but a dummy. They're very smart, they're highly educated, they know things most people will never even be able to grasp, much less understand to any significant degree. But that's still not who you would talk to about recovery from a heart attack. Being educated in one area does not make someone an expert in another area. Copter, Living Martyr was saying that Trump is the best president that he's ever known in his lifetime. Says he's 51 years old, so he's been around and at least politically aware since the Reagan era. He wouldn't have been able to vote in, but might be aware of the Carter era before it from having been at least old enough to understand some of what was going on. But he would have been born in probably 1969. So he would have been 11 when Reagan was elected. But he's claiming Trump is the best president he's seen in his entire life, and I asked him what makes him say so. And the first thing he brought up was saying, well, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords and then made a bunch of unsubstantiated statements about the Paris Climate Accord being other countries sucking money out of the United States, stealing from us to spread our wealth to other nations, and that none of it was being spent on climate-related anything without providing a shred of evidence that any of those claims are true, with the best backing he's tried to present so far being, well, lots of other Americans agree with me. So none of that is actual factual data. And when he tries I asked him, does he not think that climate change is important? He brought up a guy named Tony Heller, who I had not heard about. But when I Googled, I found the guy's own website where he lists his own credentials, and he's got a lot of education listed there, but none of it is climate science. So, the original question was about why he thinks Trump is the best president ever. He went into a kind of a tirade about how he thinks that all this money is being spent is a waste. He issued some very nihilistic statements about how who cares if the entire human race goes extinct, and that nothing matters once you're dead, and said a whole bunch of stuff that's very, kind of defeatist and negative and that kind of thing. But he really has a lot of confidence in this guy Heller, and has been urging people to take Heller's information as fact when there's no reason to do so yet. I have not seen any of his videos, but just based on the education the guy claims about himself, he literally, claims he is not an expert in this field. So, we have that. But it's still, I have not heard any reason why we should consider Trump to be the best president within his lifetime. Because, again, since, he actually does agree that climate change is happening, right? He admitted climate change happens. But he doesn't think it's important. But the fact is that climate change affects food supply because plants only grow in certain, climate and soil conditions. But he doesn't seem to care whether or not the human race dies off. But since we can demonstrate that climate change is happening and that does have an effect on food production globally, pulling out of an accord that's designed to try to minimize the harm that climate change causes to those parts of human civilization does not qualify a president as being good. It's counterproductive to the survival of the human race. So I asked him to provide some other example of what Trump has done that makes him say that Trump is the best president we've ever had. I'm still waiting for a second idea on that, but I'm curious to know what he's going to say. Have I seen the data and opinions from Richard Lindzen, Bjorn Lomborg, and Patrick Moore, who was the founder of Greenpeace? No. I have not gone seeking information from Richard Lindzen, Bjorn Lomborg, and Patrick Moore. I can't say I'm familiar with anything they have ever written. That being said, Greenpeace is primarily a wildlife protection organization. I don't know who Lindzen and Lomborg were. Best economy in U.S. history, false. That is absolutely not true, and it's absolutely demonstrably not true because you can look at the time period from the end of World War II until about 1980, and that was hands down the best economic period in the United States. And now we're absolutely in my wheelhouse. I don't know what your educational history is, but I hold 2 degrees, one of which is in computer information systems, and the other one of which is in business with majors in economics, finance, and accounting. So this is my wheelhouse. And economically, there is absolutely nothing about what's going on in the economy today that can hold a candle to the functional utility of the economy after World War II. And economists refer to that period as the golden age of American economics because things worked a lot better then than they are now by several orders of magnitude. So you can't say best economy in U.S. history. That does not hold any water, and that means you need to find another example. Illegal immigration severely limited at the border. Hold on a second. Nietzsche says, I'm not in a position to pull up stuff right now, but there have been some more recent studies about the rate of permafrost thawing and far northern permafrost collapsing and eroding at a rapid pace. That would not surprise me. If you do pull up some information about it and wish to share it, we can all take a look at it if you find that. I may not be able to look at it right now on the spot, but I am always curious to know what people think. Lollipoposaurus prepares for you to make a graph. Look at this graph. Yeah, so Living Martyr, it says illegal immigration severely limited at the border. So, okay. Let's talk about immigration for a minute. The first thing is, illegal immigration is a broad and complex topic, but if your concern is illegal immigration, you should be aware that the primary entry point for illegal immigration in this country is not the southern border with Mexico. More illegal people come here from the north and through airports and seaports by several orders of magnitude than come here across the border from Mexico. So if you are actually concerned about immigration, you are looking in the wrong place if you are concerned about the southern border. I'm assuming you're a fan of the wall. If not, let me know. But that is about the most useless thing that the country could do to deal with the immigration matter at hand. Secondly, immigration is not by definition a bad thing. We have had wave after wave after wave of immigration in this country from the time it was founded, much of which was against the immigrants' will when they were brought here in chains from the African continent, and from Haiti, actually. But we've had waves of Irish, waves of Chinese, waves of Germans, and every wave was hated and resented by the general conservative public at the time, but none of it destroyed the United States, and all of it turned out to be beneficial by giving us a very robust mix of cultures in this country. So immigration is not bad by default. So you would have to talk about what kind of immigration you object to, and then we can talk about whether or not that immigration should be, impeded, encouraged, or what. But these broad statements about illegal immigration, a huge amount of immigration that comes to the southern border of this country, since you're talking about that specifically, is people seeking asylum. They are by definition not illegal immigrants. They are asylum seekers. And they are entering the United States using the rules that the United States has set for them, right? So when people show up for asylum, the proper procedure is to cross the border into the United States and present yourself to the American authorities at the border crossing. So all these people that you're talking about who have come here seeking asylum that ended up in concentration camps, they were doing exactly what the United States' described procedure for that happens to be. So, that's a whole other question there. Copter says, sad thing is I don't really follow politics. The only thing I really know well enough to argue is firearms and explosives. Okay. Pretty sure I'm on some watch list somewhere. I don't know. Russ, I'm super pro-gun, actually, and that's okay. You're allowed to be. You never said anything about the southern border. Let's go back and look. Living Martyr. Illegal immigration severely limited at the border. Okay, you did not say the southern border. Which border were you talking about then? You love immigration, legal immigration. Unfortunately, your sister was raped by an illegal immigrant. Okay, not to be a dick about it, but I have heard so many claims about crimes committed by, quote, illegal immigrants, unquote, that I believe zero of it until I see evidence, because it's been used as a manipulation tool without backing so many times to my face that I take no such report as being true until it's verified. But assuming that did actually happen, that puts you in a position where you have an emotional response coloring your judgment about it, which means you are not going to be likely to see this objectively. And as far as legal immigration goes, a lot of conservatives love to talk about legal immigration, but what they either don't know about or don't care about is that conservative legislators keep making it harder and harder and harder to come here legally. So you can talk about how you love legal immigration all you want, but if you're voting for people that fuck the process over and make it virtually impossible to come here legally, you don't love immigration. You don't love legal immigration. You hate immigrants and are perfectly happy to vote for people that will restrict any way for them to come into the country legally. So you don't get to have it both ways on there. Why use nukes? Clearly, atomic squids are the future. I agree. Having a 10-legged projectile that can actually grab onto the target before it detonates is obviously the superior choice. Why not legalize crossing the border then? It is legal to cross the border. When you're an asylum seeker, the specific process the United States specifies for coming here to seek asylum is to cross the border and present yourself to the Americans at the border crossing. Let me send you the pictures of her rape. Get the fuck out of here, asshole, says Living Martyr. I'm not going to actually put that in here. But like I said, having had people lie about claims of illegal immigrant crime so many times to discussions where I am a participant or to my face in person, I am simply disinclined to believe such claims without evidence. I am not saying you have to prove it. I'm saying that if you are in fact telling the truth, all that means is that you are going to have an emotional rather than rational reaction to it. And actually, I am going to allow your post so people can see exactly how rational you aren't about this subject. You're very pro-squid. Immigration of different races into any country where there's a majority of one race destroys the social cohesiveness of a country. You do not have to look any further than the fact that the races have different values and cultural identity. Okay, you're bordering, or you're pushing real close to the border of racism there. So you need to have some way of explaining and justifying that belief without being a racist jerk about it, or I'm going to time you out. Because when you start saying things like race mixing destroys the cohesiveness of a country, and that races have different values, you better be able to back that up in a way that isn't just some kind of bigotry. Don't fuck with my squid idea. I'm legitimately trying to get funding for a squid launcher. The fella named Israel, he said immigration of different races into any country where there is a majority of one race destroys the social cohesiveness of a country. That is a statement that mixing the races within a country destroys social cohesiveness. He also says you do not have to look any further than the fact that races have different values, which means he believes that mixing races causes a clash of values and culture identity, to use his words. Be careful what you post as your justification for this, Israel, because the next thing you post is going to have a big impact on whether or not you are going to keep posting here. I just have to tread very lightly. Imagine a PO2 with a squid turret. Russian World War I era biplane with a squid turret. Fantastic. Yeah, Nietzsche points out something very good. New York City seems to get along fairly well with a bunch of different cultures living side by side and not, burning each other's neighborhoods to the ground. The fate of empires. All right, I'm going to Google this thing. Hang on a second. I'm going to change screens because I don't know what I'm going to get when I Google that, and if it's something that would get me in trouble with Twitch, I don't want it to show up on screen here. So, hang on. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is you wrote a book about looking at human civilization history and talks a great deal about the mixing of cultures, and that his work essentially is designed to appeal to white nationalists who believe that the West is in decline because of the addition of other ethnic groups to whites. And that's not something I think I'm going to promote here. I haven't dug into it enough to have a more distinct opinion on it. But the reaction of most people that I'm seeing to this seems to fall into two categories. It looks like you have a lot of white nationalists who swear by this guy, and a lot of others who say this is not really an okay book. But again, it's I don't have enough information to make a clear-cut decision one way or the other. I just know that from what I'm seeing, his book is controversial, and before I'll put it on the stream, I need to look into it more. Okay, well, again, I'm not putting the text of this guy's book up on my screen. Number one, it's copyrighted. Number two, I have no idea what it says, and if it says anything unsavory, I would get in trouble with Twitch. So until I can actually do some more research on it, I can't put it up on stream. But what you claimed specifically was that the introduction of other races to a majority nation destroys social cohesiveness, and I am asking you to provide your justification for it, not this other guy's justification. What do you say is the reason for that? And you should also back up your claim that different races have different values. You know, like, I happen to be Caucasian. I know plenty of people from different races, and they have virtually the same value system that I do. You know, they love their families, they love their communities, they believe in the rule of law, that type of thing. I don't see any kind of national cohesion wrecking difference in their values. Nietzsche says, we're one of, if not the most diverse culture. We'd be long gone if cultures living in the same society was a bad thing. Our economy certainly couldn't be good, or we couldn't be well educated. My typing is bad today. I feel your pain. Around this time of night, my fingers start to turn to fudge. Because you haven't presented facts. You presented an opinion and then said, go read this guy's book, essentially. Like, here you said, here's where I'm getting this from. And like I told him, I have not read this person's work before, and from what I am seeing, it may not be all that credible. Okay? And I am asking for you to explain your views. Okay? Like, I've still been asking Living Martyr to explain why he thinks that Trump is the best president in his lifetime, and the things that he's offered so far have been either subjective opinion that basically boils down to he doesn't care if the world ends in starvation, so he doesn't give a shit about climate change, and is willing to make a bunch of really outlandish accusations about where the money for climate change goes without backing it up. And that he thinks the economy in the United States is the best it's ever been, which is simply patently false. So I'm continuing to ask him for his reasons why he thinks that Trump is the best president that this country has had in his lifetime. Because the stuff he's offered so far has not really held any water. Russ, are books viable sources? It depends on what subject matter you're talking about. Can you use a whole-ass book as a source? In certain cases, yes, you can use a whole-ass book as a source. So, for example, if you were going to say, I'm citing the Bible, then your Bible in its entirety is the source, right? So there are certain circumstances in which that can happen. Okay, so you've given me the article that led you to your views. Okay, so... And I will look into that article later on, assuming I don't have to like pay significant money to get it. You know, I'm not going to spend $100 to buy somebody's book just to satisfy my curiosity about this discussion. But I am still curious to know what makes you. Let's ask the question this way: what makes you agree with that opinion? Right. So I'm asking you, you made certain claims. I'm asking you to specify why you believe them, you know, what makes you feel that opinion is correct. Gazer External. Right now, we're talking about a couple different things. The base one that started this whole conversational thread was a fella showed up here calling himself Living Martyr. Where's his name? Hold on. Scroll up. Living Martyr Report, claiming that Trump is the best president the United States has had in his lifetime. And I'm asking what makes him think so. And the first claim he made was basically that he pulled out of the Paris Climate Change Accords. That was his first reason for saying that. But since failing to address climate change, which he does admit is happening, by the way, he does acknowledge that the climate is changing. He just has this nihilistic view that if the world goes, you know, like if every living human on the planet goes extinct, it doesn't matter. So there's not much to discuss there, but a president basically going along with a plan that says he doesn't care if the human race dies out is not an actual it's not actually a good thing the president is doing, because at the very least it shows a disdain for the survival of the citizens of the country he's supposed to be leading, right? And Gazer, thank you for the follow. I'll just put the Associated Press site back up there. The second thing he offered was, quote, best economy ever, basically. And that's patently false. The best economy the United States has ever had was from the end of World War II till about 1980, which is why economists call it the golden age of the American economy. And right now the economy's in the toilet. I mean, you need only take a look at such things as, like my father-in-law, a person in that era working a single, unskilled, full-time job, being able to own a home and support a family of 5, whereas that is simply not possible today. So the minimum wage allowing people to pay for a college education on part-time work for just the summer, again, not today. So, his second claim was simply not true. So I'm continuing to ask what Trump has done that makes him say that this is the best president the United States has ever had. He said illegal immigration being reduced at the border, and that brought up the subject of immigration, and now we have Israel talking about how he believes, because of something he read from an author, that when you bring different, and these were kind of his words, when you bring different races into a country that's a majority of a particular race, that it destroys social cohesion, which I have challenged him to back that up, so he's listed a link to the guy who wrote the article. But the thing that I'm struggling with about Israel's opinion on this is that the United States is not a significantly majority of any one race. Like, Caucasians do happen to hold the largest numbers right now, but non-whites have such a large representation in this country that, it seems kind of unsupportable to think that, let's say immigration as we're currently looking at it, which when talked about by conservatives frequently means, Latinos and Mexicans and people from south of the United States, is their typical, for lack of a better term, whipping boy about that. I don't think that is going to be the thing that destroys social cohesion in the United States. I can't see that as having any, demonstrable reality to it. I mean, one of the challenges, as a white person myself, I enjoy quite a bit of privilege in this country. Being white, I'm accepted as of the normative ethnicity. I'm male, so I'm taken seriously most of the time. I have a lot of the privilege check boxes. But when somebody's in my category and they think about a large amount of immigration from the South, for example, it isn't that that's necessarily bad, but it does highlight things like the fact that the United States is full of monolinguistic people, as opposed to multilinguistic people. So having a large number of people in the country that speak Spanish as a primary language seems very challenging to them because it challenges their privilege. But you look at countries like Switzerland, where there's a lot of different ethnic background, a lot of different national backgrounds represented, and virtually everybody there speaks at least 3 languages fluently, including being literate in them. So the fact is not that, immigration is bad per se. It's that Americans are bad at coping with immigrants. We don't speak languages other than English. We don't study cultures other than the one in the town we grew up in. A huge number of Americans have never been outside the borders of the United States. A large number of them have never been outside of their home state. So we are woefully inadequately prepared to, understand the differences between us and other people, or to welcome them into our country. But even if they have some different cultural habits or some different holidays they celebrate or whatever, that's not a reason to say they shouldn't be allowed to emigrate here. Let's see, what else we got here? If there's time, can we talk about VA? VA meaning what, Gazer? Like the Veterans Administration? The best thing Trump has done is give us Trump memes. I'm not sure anything in the world fails to provide memes in this day and age. I'm an American. I support the president, but if VA goes down... Oh, Virginia. Okay. Sorry, there's just a bunch of ways you can interpret Virginia. Goes down over these gun laws or even the perception they will be passed and enforced and the president doesn't step in, we are looking at a bad time. Okay. So here's the thing. Gun enthusiasts like to say, oh, well, we should obey the law, and the law says you can own guns, and blah, 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 blah. What most gun enthusiasts don't seem to understand or know is that until about 1971, everybody just knew the Second Amendment had nothing whatsoever to do with personal firearms ownership. Okay? Because the Second Amendment doesn't actually say that. It says that American citizens can have guns for the purpose of being a part of a well-regulated militia. It does not say you have the right to own them just for the hell of it. Okay? So it only came with the Heller decision in Heller versus the District of Columbia that this started to shift. And, this is not, it was never a new concept. People had challenged it for the nearly 200 years this country had existed prior to the Heller case, and Supreme Court after Supreme Court after Supreme Court upheld the idea that this was about a well-regulated militia, which, if you study your history and you know what the founders were talking about when they said well-regulated militia, they were talking about a National Guard, not about, a bunch of guys in camo suits getting together and whooping it up on the weekends and, stockpiling spam. But once that change happened, people started looking at it differently. So what gun enthusiasts have to understand is the law is something that evolves over time. And if the pendulum swings back to more restrictions happen, then if you are a law-abiding citizen, not to put too fine a point on it, but you shut up and obey the law. Okay, like people like me don't like the idea that people can own what amounts to military-grade weaponry and run around with it and, do whatever the hell they're going to do with it, because so many people die every year because of that it seems ludicrous to me that people don't understand the connection between those two items. But because the law is what it is, right, I have to accept that, like when I go to a local restaurant, that occasionally I will see a guy standing there with a pistol on his hip or an AR-15 strapped across his back because it's legal. All right? If Virginia changes its laws and the people there who own guns are law-abiding citizens, they will obey the law. If they refuse to obey the law, they are criminals. If they show up in numbers of 20,000 armed and disobeying the law, then they are insurrectionists. And as people have worried, the National Guard might get called out to suppress that. Okay? Because if you don't want to obey the law, you're a criminal. If the law says X about guns, if you want to be a law-abiding gun owner, you obey the law. Period. End of story. And gun owners in this country, even the ones in Virginia, have such broad freedom to own guns that it is only sheer insanity that makes 20,000 of them want to show up in Richmond to scream about this. No, I don't hate that there are people like you out there. I hate that people don't want to address the gun problem in this country. I think if you want to own a gun, as long as you do it within the confines of the law, that you're allowed to do that. I would hope that we would implement some laws like requiring people to store them safely so like kids don't kill themselves with their parents' guns. But I don't want to take everybody's gun away. I just want to do something to mitigate the unbelievable number of firearms-related injuries and deaths in this country. And there are steps that can be taken to mitigate that, but gun enthusiasts seem absolutely averse to doing any of it. Yeah, Israel, if you knew me, you would understand that is absolutely not my stance on anything. I believe in using your right to vote. I believe in using whatever soapbox you have. I believe in trying to petition the government for redress. You know, if the people who are opposing these new gun laws want to show up in Richmond with picket signs, more power to them. March with your picket signs. You show up armed to the teeth in violation of the law, that's a whole different story. That's an absolutely different story. And Copter is there, no gun, no compromise, or no gun control, no compromise. I have tried so hard to warn the gun enthusiasts that I know that if they prove to the rest of the world that they are never, ever, ever, ever going to give a shit enough about the massive numbers of dead kids in this country that are only dead because guns were in use or present or whatever, that when somebody else has the authority and wants to protect these kids' lives, they're going to force that shit. Because you have proven you are not willing to compromise in the name of safety of the public. You are not willing to compromise to prevent the slaughter of children. And in that, anybody who is not interested in reducing the number of slaughtered children is somebody who has no moral foundation to stand on. You know, and when you say that you will never, ever compromise, then all you tell the opposition is that the minute they have the ability to force the changes that will protect the lives of children, that they have to do it and force it through. You know, you are literally giving the people on the left no option other than to club the legal system over the head the instant they have a chance, because as far as people on the right are concerned, they'll gladly watch thousands of kids die a year just so they can have their guns. You know, and nobody believed me when I said that's what you were setting yourselves up for, and now Virginia's doing it, and you're all mad about it. No, confiscation is not the quote-unquote right step. Okay? The right steps would be things like requiring safe storage of weapons and ammunition, funding mental health care better so that people who might want to use a firearm to commit suicide have other options available to them that would give them a way to handle their problems rather than shooting themselves. Requiring universal background checks so that felons can't get their hands on guns the way they can now. Like, none of the stuff I'm talking about is talking about mass confiscation of guns. I just want to see some common sense basic stuff done that acknowledges at least that people on the right think, yeah, maybe getting schools shot to pieces with 25 or 30 or 50 dead kids is not okay. But when they refuse to budge at all, they are saying they care more about their gun collection than they do about dead children. And I cannot accept that that is a position that should be looked at as anything other than inexcusable. Excuse me, but Mexico just had a mass shooting. Yeah, there you go. All right, Israel, have a good night. I appreciate you having been, a reasonable person here. Yes, I understand that, but the circumstance you were in when you shot at those kids was that they were armed and approaching you with intent to commit violence. You know, they were literally pirates. For those who don't know, Copter is a member, or was working as a member, of a company that provides armed security to shipping companies, so that when their cargo vessels and such have to travel through pirate-infested waters, that they have a defense team on board. So he has actually had to shoot at armed kids coming at his vessel in speedboats and such. What does someone like you do? I don't know what you mean by someone like you. You'd have to be more specific. When the conversation stops and the shooting starts, exactly what shootings do you think is going to start? Like, what conversation do you think is going to end followed by the starting of gunplay? There's only 20,000 cops in the state. I'm not mad. I'm scared. That's where the last 20 years of gun control talk ends. Again, I'm not sure exactly what kind of firefight you're thinking you're going to get into. And the Virginia state government is serious. They're going to go in on confiscation. And Gazer, again, I have tried very hard to warn people that, on the right, on the gun enthusiast side, that if they just dig their heels in and make it plain that they don't give a fuck how many kids die, that their opponents on the left are going to believe them. And the way the U.S. government works is when one side controls all the branches of government in an area, they can essentially do whatever they want. And if you've made it clear that you don't care if their kids die in a school shooting, they will make sure that doesn't happen for you. I begged people to pay attention to that. I asked all the people I know who have guns to show a willingness to actually acknowledge the problem and work across the aisle to find some kind of way of dealing with it, but instead of proving that they will never give a shit, and none of them listened. And this is the result. And I told them this would be the result. And again, yes, those bills are that serious because people on the right made it clear they would never give a shit. So the more extremist you prove yourselves to be, the more extreme the backlash is going to be. It's just the way politics works. I mean, what did you expect would happen after decades of the right saying, fuck your dead children? What exactly did you think the response would be when Democrats actually had the opportunity to respond? Do you think they were going to say, you know what, you're right, fuck it, I don't care if my kids die? Because if you were expecting that, you were expecting the wrong thing. For something like automatic weapons, it's my opinion, it's definitely a place where they should be restricted to something like a well-regulated militia, regulated, stored, and protected as such. They don't belong in the town square. And that is Nietzsche says, and that is exactly what Jefferson and the rest of the founders said. When you look at the letters they wrote when they were explaining what they meant by the words in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they were specifically talking about a National Guard that was equipped and drilled by the state, and that the weapons were, used exactly for that purpose. It had nothing to do with private gun ownership, which is why the Second Amendment is exactly one sentence long, not two sentences. It's one. Did you hate capitalism this much when you were getting your economics degree? The more I learned about economics, the more I understood that capitalism was a dangerous and harmful thing. Gazer, I'm not looking to get in a shooting war. I just live in VA and I can tell people are serious on both sides and it won't go down well. The city of Richmond isn't built to handle any protest of any kind. The only reason the city of Richmond would have a problem with a large protest is if the people protesting are carrying guns. If those people were not armed, if they were wielding picket signs instead of weapons, it would require a minimal police presence, nothing more than is required to manage a holiday parade. But the people in Virginia who are gun enthusiasts are literally looking to start some shit. And you should be very scared of what will happen if people like you decide to not obey the law. Because if a bunch of protesters show up armed at the state capitol and start a gun battle, the military will be called in to put it down as insurrection, and you're going to see a lot of fucking dead gun enthusiasts. The stupidest thing they could do would be to actually initiate an armed conflict with the government. There is no way that ends with anything other than a shitload of dead gun owners. Again, doesn't matter whether they're natives of the state showing up in Richmond or out-of-staters coming in for the protest. If they show up armed, and even a single one of them gets trigger-happy, exactly what do you think the public will demand if one of them calls a cop a pig, pulls his pistol, and shoots the guy? What do you think will happen? Because it's not going to be, oh yeah, you're right, fuck the cops, I'm glad that guy's dead, man, those heroic protesters really showed him. Because that's not going to be the way it goes. You'll have a massive amount of dead people, and you'll have a military response called in, because when you have, as on one side, 20,000 pissed off armed people shooting at government employees, that's not something that gets handled with a light touch. That's when the National Guard shows up. That's when the military shows up. That's when tanks roll into town. And let's see. Hold on, scrolling up. Automatic weapons are heavily restricted. They are. I think you need a federal firearms license to get fully automatic weapons in most places. The General Assembly just passed a gun ban for the Capitol grounds for the duration of the General Assembly. Again, the gun owners of that state lose the right to call themselves law-abiding citizens if they refuse to follow the law. Okay? The only reason to show up at that place armed is not to protest, it's to hope for gunplay. Because you can show up in numbers equaling 20,000 with picket signs, and there will be no gun battle. And you will make your point very thoroughly with a giant crowd showing up at the State House. But if you bring the guns, if you opt not to do it peacefully, number one, you're no longer law-abiding citizens and you deserve whatever shit goes wrong and happens to you. And number two, it will only make you guys look like the criminals that you have chosen to be if you start shooting at people during that protest. Because all it's going to take is one guy who shows up there who pre-gamed a little, had a few beers before the parade, and is carrying a loaded weapon. That's all it's going to take. That's a giant powder keg, and any incident that happens is not going to result in a repeal of those laws. It's going to result in martial law being declared, mass arrests, and a shitload of dead Second Amendment fans. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't count on the media to be a peaceful contributor to that. I would count on the media to hope for chaos to ensue because it makes for good ratings. Let's see. Yes, Copter, again, it only takes one dumbass to fire a shot and kick off, the problems. Yes. So past today, banning guns at the same Capitol sounds reasonable. Look up SB 16. Hang on, I can get a full list. Actually, just Google Virginia Second Amendment laws. You'll get sites that lean right and left on your issue. I'd rather not grab the wrong source and bias your opinion. Also, I know it will happen. The news will be there and get hot as fuck. I don't want to be the summation of a bill which can actually be asked to be different. I know it's a huge powder keg. Yeah, and that's the problem. And you know what the thing is? It's been my experience that a lot of Second Amendment fans only believe in gun rights for white people. Okay? Reagan was a very big proponent of gun control, if you can believe it, when he was the governor of California. Because during the civil rights era, the Black Panther movement realized they were American citizens too, and started legally purchasing shitloads of guns. Okay, and when it became apparent that it wouldn't just be white people with an arsenal in their house, Reagan implemented the harshest gun control laws in the country, in California. Okay? So, it's kind of been my experience that the minute somebody who is not white wants to have guns, that a lot of people on the Second Amendment side freak out. And I actually trolled some people in my own area to in a way that proved that. So there was, I live in New Hampshire, and there was a gun advocacy group that wanted to do an open carry rally at the state capitol, much like what you guys are talking about there, only with much smaller numbers. It might have been 100 people that showed up, right? And it still would have been a powder keg despite the smaller numbers, but it never happened. And the reason it never happened was because of me and the fact that I trolled them. And the way I trolled them was I made a fake Facebook account with a name and a picture that looked, vaguely Middle Eastern, and I went to their site, to their Facebook page. I joined it, and I said, "Hey, I'm a big fan of the Second Amendment too, and all my friends from my mosque want to go to the rally with you. What's the time and date?" And they suddenly canceled the whole event because the idea of some brown Muslim people showing up with guns scared the living shit out of them. So the event never happened, and who knows how it would have gone. Hopefully it would have gone peacefully, but if something would have gone wrong, it didn't because they canceled the event. And Russ, definitely on the not Reagan train. Gazer, I'm also on mobile, so if I change to my browser, I'll miss the stream. But even if you find a site with summations, just go to the General Assembly website for VA and use the bill tracker. Yeah, in the age of the internet, it's not hard to find the literal text of a bill on the internet. Yeah, this is actually kind of cool. I had been thinking I was going to be finishing the stream at about, 10:15, and it's now 15:15 midnight. So we've been having a very interesting discussion here, and I do thank you all for, being so contributory. I'm kind of sorry that Living Martyr decided to bail. but I really don't think he understood that the arguments he was positing didn't have any logical weight to them. And he was obviously getting flustered, so maybe it's for the best that he took a break. You know, I do try to have these discussions without being like, you're an idiot, you know, to anybody, you know, just because they disagree with me. I'll point out bad arguments, but I try not to call people names, you know, that kind of thing. Well, and that's the thing, Lollipop. It's good when people actually have the factual stuff to back up what's, you know, being said. That's the kind of thing I really love to see. Helicopters belong in tank games. So Copter and I met because we both play a game called War Thunder, which I play primarily for the tank game. And the company that makes it has kind of gone overboard, adding more aircraft and helicopters and such to the game. And the helicopters can kind of shred the tanks, and I find it very frustrating. So Copter is trying to pull my chain by saying helicopters belong in tank games. In case any of you were wondering what the hell he was talking about, you know, that's it. That's what he's talking about. Oh, man. You know what I hope? I hope at some point I get offered affiliate with this, because I would love to make this something that's self-supporting in terms of, you know, the cost of getting some better art for it and everything. I don't know if you guys have looked, but all the art on this page is hand-drawn garbage that I did, and I am barely able to manage a stick figure, you know? So I would love to spiff the site up a little bit here and make it a little more visually appealing. Oh, man. I laugh at my own lack of artistic talent. Oh boy, okay, so it looks like the conversation's winding down a little bit, and if nothing else comes up here in the next minute or two, I'm probably going to wind down. I'm totally a noob pilot in War Thunder. Anyone should 1v1 and find out. Don't believe that for a second. Copter is like the fucking Red Baron of War Thunder. I am not even joking. I mean, if you want to learn what a really talented player of that game plays like, he's somebody to watch. Looking at these proposed bills, I haven't found anything objectionable yet. It's essentially the same as what we here in Connecticut passed over the last few years. Nietzsche, I have some friends that live in Connecticut who are Second Amendment fans, and it drives them crazy. They hate the laws in Connecticut. They basically, like, I kind of get the feeling they would like to have, like, crew-served .50 caliber emplacements in their front yard, and they're mad they can't, kind of thing. And they're great people, just, you know, like, kind of over the top when it comes to the gun thing. Yeah, it's exactly like you flew for the top squadron in the game, Copter, and you know it is. You're just humble bragging at this point. You humble bragging bastard. Ugh. You know them. So do you know specifically people who know me? Like, are you actually somebody I know that hasn't revealed that to me yet? Yeah. I gotta say, it sounded to me like Pearl thought he was going to walk in and stomp you, and he was taken more than a little by surprise by your skill level. Oh, you know people like that. Okay, I was going to say, if you were actually like a friend of mine hiding behind a new username, I was going to laugh for not realizing it. What exactly are you sending me now? Hold on. Oh, these are articles on the coastal erosion stuff? Yeah. Interesting. All right. Stuff to bookmark. Cool. All right. You still want a roof-mounted 50 for a deuce and a half? Hang on a second. So, not the band. So the company that makes this device is actually in a town like about half an hour from me. And most of the people I live near have no idea that this is there. It's the Crows 2, the compact remotely operated weapons system. These things are like all over the Israeli border, as a matter of fact. You know, they like, oh look, a heat signature, rat-a-tat-tat-tat, and like somebody's dead and nobody even had to do anything. It's like bonkers. And they can be armed with very large or very small weapons. But yeah, a lot of them are pretty heavy duty. And you got the... So yeah, the company that manufactures that stuff is all over the area where I live. Copter, you need it. Copter, I don't think you could afford it. Some of those things are probably $500,000 a unit. Does it shoot squids? God, you've gotten everybody else on board with that. No, it does not fire squids. I'm sure you could modify it, though. Yeah. I have to say, the fellow who was here earlier, Martyr, I was genuinely surprised at how nihilistic he sounded about the idea of the extermination of the human race. Like, it genuinely surprised me. Like, his statements made it very clear he's a nihilist. He talked about how nothing mattered, and once you're dead, it doesn't matter, everybody will forget you, you know, kind of thing. And I guess I can understand why, to him, the idea of climate change doesn't seem threatening, because he doesn't care, you know? Which is just a staggering thing for me to realize. There are people out there who legitimately don't care if the human race dies off. You know, that's just kind of mind-boggling to me. I mean, I understand he feels that way, but wow. So, yeah. I need to check something here. What? Who's around? No. Oh, okay. All right, so... Yeah. Well, so the next question is, do you guys have anything else you want to yak about, or should we wind down? It's getting closer to 12:30 than 12:10. So I'm thinking it might be time to do some sleeping fairly soon, and if that's the case, then I will send a quick raid out if you guys are down. So let me do that. Yada, 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 yada. Yada. They changed the interface, so I need to figure out how to do this. Where's the raid thing now? Clip that. Raid channel. Here we go. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. Let's start the raid. I know we're not a giant channel, but I do appreciate you guys coming by. And please stick around for the raid and just say hi when you're there. I'd appreciate it. Meanwhile, I'm going to head out. Thank you guys for coming. I'll be back again on Monday around the same time. Have a wonderful evening.